Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wowhead Weekly number 187. I am Annie, also known as Annie Fuchsia. I am a full-time streamer on Twitch. Most of the time, you'd be catching me playing World of Warcraft. Wowhead Weekly is all about World of Warcraft, right? So I'm sure most of you guys feel the same about the game interests. Today, we have a special guest. But before I introduce him, I'd like to introduce my lovely co-host, Perculia.
Hey everyone, I'm Perk. I also have a cat with me, known as Brightpaw, who's very charming. And I am the site director for Wowhead, and it's always really fun to do this show every Thursday because we get to talk about what's been popular on the site for the past week, what's going on, answer your questions. And in cases like today, we even have a special guest on from the Warcraft community. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Tettles, who you may know as Wowhead's Balanced Druid class writer, and also one of the casters for the Dazar'alor Method World First Rates.
Yeah. So Tettles, hello.
Surprise.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing quite well. Had class a little bit earlier, so I think that's why we're starting a little bit late. Had class at your normal start time. Thank you for accommodating me.
Thank you for coming. It's awesome having you here. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so like
Tell us about some of the things you like in WoW.
Yeah, like what do you do besides playing Balanced Druid?
So aside from playing Balanced Druid, I do a pretty decent amount of PvE. I'm currently in like a World 30th level guild, so pretty hardcore for most standards, but I would prefer it to be better. We're getting close on a Jaina kill, so hopefully we'll kill that tonight. So that would be pretty nice. Maybe I'll get the mount.
Oh,
that would be good, dude. If I got the mount.
We're just discussing a number of mounts like right before the show, so he knows. He's just trying to make me jealous now. That's what's happening right here. But yeah,
I also did the MDI, last MDI, so you saw me on the team that 4-man, so that was a lovely experience.
Does that mean we'll maybe see you in a future MDI?
I would like to participate in the next MDI. Currently, I do have plans to participate in the MDI in some form or fashion. So I would love to continue. I thought it was really fun, and I kind of feel gypped, honestly, from the last MDI. So we'll see.
Okay, well that's awesome.
Yeah. So tell us a bit how you got into casting, because there are obviously way fewer casters than there are participants in a raid or the MDI. How did you This was the first time you were casting, right?
Yeah.
So
basically, I guess it would have actually started with me getting the guide writer job with Wowhead. So whenever I got that, basically, I decided that I also wanted to start making YouTube content in some regard, right? So I started making YouTube videos as well in order to be able to kind of I enjoy making videos and editing and doing that kind of thing in my spare time anyway. So I thought that would be a pretty good creative outlet for myself. So that it kind of started there. But then in terms of like the casting thing, I think Sowers was approached by Method in order to be able to cast the event. And they asked him if he had any friends or somebody who he thought would be available and willing to come and cast the event who he thought were knowledgeable. And he actually recommended myself. So that's actually how it happened.
Awesome.
So, but yeah, it was like it was like very quick, honestly, and I was not expecting it. But it was I definitely enjoyed it a lot, and it was, even though it was kind of unforeseen, it was actually a ton of fun.
Did you have to tell your guild like, oh, sorry, I can't raid? Like, you have to find another boomkin for
that was an interesting conversation. It was like, yeah, so that Race to World First. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be here for the first couple weeks. Because I'm gonna be in London.
Oh, like, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, whoopsie. Yeah, I'm busy. About that World First,
Yeah.
Was it your first time in London?
Yes, it was my first time in London. It was not my first time in Europe, though.
Okay, cool. Wait, so
Did
what
you
other
get time to
countries have you been
sightsee?
to? Unfortunately, I did not get enough time to sightsee. I was working a pretty decent amount, but it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed every minute of it. Just being, and that was really like, those are my people. Those are my kind of people, being out there in the Red Bull gaming sphere, like watching them day raid, day in and day out. And even though it was like a lot of work, it was a ton of fun. And I thought it was pretty rewarding as a whole.
That's the best type of work.
Awesome.
That's awesome to hear. And we can also see that Sours is actually in the chat.
Yay.
Yeah,
Hello,
feels
Sours.
good, man. Kitsuki says, good gag classic Sours.
So
Yeah.
how did you prepare for casting the method event, especially because, it's a pretty unique event, and then on top of that, you hadn't casted anything before?
So in terms of like the fight research, I felt like I going in knew a lot about the fights just because I'd done like PTR testing, and I was actually fairly familiar with the fights just from PTR testing and then just raid experience in general. I felt like I was prepared in terms of what I should be like looking to do analysis wise. The issue with me was more like the casting and more of like the fluidity of the show and what they were going to be looking for. So a lot of the I was kind of nervous coming into it in the very beginning, but then like as the show went on and as I got more accustomed to how other people on the desk and stuff were going to be able to talk and cast and all that other kind of stuff, it became more comfortable for me. But in terms of preparation, I just tried to make sure that with my YouTube videos early on, I was saying a lot as like a filler, and so I was actually just like even before this event, I was trying to make sure I was able to talk a little bit more clear, get my thoughts across a little bit better. Being able to be more analytical on the desk is something I was going for because we had people like Hotted and Rich and even JB to some regard who are like entertainers and who are entertaining and funny and all that other stuff. So I wanted to bring a more analytical approach to the desk. So I was kind of focusing on that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah, you really seem to loosen up. I think you were starting off, I was watching you, and then I remember a few days in, you were casting the Warfront, and you were like running around like World War's Warfront.
All right, it got a little bit loony in the middle of it.
I think you were a good entertainer. Yeah, you had a good mix of being.
Rich and I got on a
entertaining.
spiel about like oil diffusers after like the second or third day of Jaina progression. And I think it went pretty much downhill from there. I mean, it was like 300 pulls of Jaina. It was like hard to talk about just like the fight itself. So we needed to be able to be like, yeah, exactly. It needed to be like entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
Was that, I mean, you mentioned, was that one a challenge of casting? Like, how do you keep something interesting on the, 100th wipe? Was there anything else that was sort of surprising that you found during the cast?
Yeah, no. So that was actually the most challenging part, was to be able to keep it entertaining beyond the scope of like what was just being shown on the screen. Because obviously it's pretty easy to talk about what's on the screen, but you don't want to be discussing it for hours on end, like 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
In terms of that, the most challenging thing also was being able to work for 4-hour blocks was actually relatively challenging going into it. I thought it was going to be like okay, but then like whenever I got into it, it was pretty hard to be able to sit there and be just be always on for 4 hours at a time and doing that like twice a day.
Yeah,
It was a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
It was very draining, honestly. But the motivation just like from the guys and then just the rest of the people on the desk and everything else was really helpful as a whole.
Oh, that's sweet to hear. That's awesome.
Yeah, I imagine if you got into the groove, you had all this adrenaline, but then afterwards it must feel like really tiring that you want to crash, but then you can't crash because you have to go back onto the show in a few hours.
I was actually asleep like while they were doing like the final 15 pulls. I think I was taking like a 20 or 30-minute nap like during it. I woke up like right as they were killing the boss. It was okay. I was really tired.
Yeah, I can imagine. So how many hours would you get on average like per day?
Like of sleep? Depending on when I was casting. Somewhere it was like one day I slept like literally like 4 hours. But most days I was able to get like 8, 10, 12 sometimes. Just depending on how much time I ended up having. But one day I got like very few hours of sleep because they ended up pulling super late into the night. And okay, so we thought that they were going to kill it super early on, but they ended up pulling like really late into the night. And Sours and Bay were on for like 6 hours or something. And then I was like laying in bed and they were asking for a break in Discord or whatever. And I was like, all right, fine. I'll get back up and I'll come back down to the sphere. And it was like, but I probably shouldn't cast like first block in the morning. And it was like, and then I just like woke up after like 5 hours and went and casted the next morning. So I didn't get much sleep that day. But overall, I got an okay amount of sleep.
Yeah. Well, that's
yeah,
good.
I even remember covering it here. I even sort of messed up my own sleep schedule so I could be around if anything happened, like if there was a super good pull or if there was a kill. So I found myself waking up, 2 or 3 a.m. Pacific time.
Oh,
so
yeah,
I could be around whenever it started. And I noticed that the every morning the start time would creep later and later. So for example, they used to start at 11 p.m. my time, but then by the end it was like 3 a.m. my time. So
that's funny.
Yeah, it did start creeping, and it was really like the people at Red Bull and stuff were getting there at 7:30 every day regardless. So
right.
even though the start time is creeping back, the Red Bull people were there working a ton too. So
That's
it was really
crazy.
like all hands on deck thing with like everybody was putting in a ton of hours.
What was the studio like? I mean, we saw obviously one part in so much detail, but like was there like another room, or was there some part of the studio they didn't want us to see on the camera? Anything interesting about the space?
So there were like 2 production rooms that were like off to the side. One of them had like a big screen, and it was like the soundboard and the tracks and stuff like that, so they could swap between player POVs and everything. So they had that, and then in the other room there was like an editing booth where there was like 3 computers set up for them to be able to edit some of the clips and make sure that they had stuff for like the end of the day, and making sure that they had the stuff set up for being able to make the stream be able to run overnight and stuff like that. Because I think they were actually streaming it for 24 hours a day.
Yeah,
They were
had
just running like a rebroadcast. Yeah.
Yeah. Were
So
you involved in that at all? Like, were you like, hey, like, highlight this clip, I think it's really good, or was someone else?
So after the fact, Sowers and Mike Preach had a wrap up show, and I actually helped them get clips up for that. But beyond that, I wasn't like highlighting it in real time. In retrospect, I think that probably would have been a pretty, but no.
I mean, you were casting as well, so you can expect yourself to do like, even more. Like that's already a lot of work.
I mean, yeah, if I was able to just like timestamp like stuff like funny things that happened or whatever else and be a little bit more on the ball with stuff like that, I think it would have been a little bit easier. But we ended up getting the logs after the fact, and we're able to kind of piece through and kind of look at what we were looking for, because we all were there and paying attention for the most part. So we had like a pretty good idea of like when stuff was occurring. So we kind of knew what to be looking. But like in terms of like specific times and stuff like that, it was like we would like open up this 16-hour long VOD and have to look through it and be like, where did this even happen?
Yeah.
I feel like the Twitch community and Reddit were also really good at clipping important moments and sharing them. So, it's also pretty easy to look through the highlights and be like, oh, Method's super low wipe has a ton of things, or this is the pull where they realize that, chilling touch suddenly worked differently. So maybe that helped as well.
Yeah, Reddit is really very good at that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think Squishay actually messed up his sleep schedule too, covering the world first stuff. I know he was messaging me like when I was he got some messed up sleep schedule too for that whole entire thing. I remember.
Yeah, it's still kind of messed up, by the way. Like,
I think that's typical for him. Knowing him, he normally sleeps pretty weird hours, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know about weird hours, but European.
Yeah, and he's in the EU, so it's like midnight for you. So
yeah, it's midnight for me, but it still feels early because I tend to go to sleep in the morning, as in past 6 a.m. I'm American in spirit. That's why. That's why. Yeah. Do you have any?
Was there? So go ahead. No, you go ahead. I'm drinking water.
All right. I was going to ask if you had any other sort of fun memories that you wanted to share that you could think of.
Dude, actually casting with Rich and Hotted were some of the funniest things ever, especially whenever we were in that like 100 to 150 pull range where it's like nothing's new is happening. They're just kind of sitting here and we sit there and we just talk literally about oil diffusers for 30 minutes. That was actually one of the funniest things.
I saw that on the Method video.
That was the most ridiculous thing ever. But I'm just like, what is going on? And like they're actually just very good showmen. And I thought that we had a pretty good dynamic on the desk. That was actually super fun. The dinner after the world first kill, where everybody was just kind of relaxed and everybody had like a chance to step back and kind of just talk to one another. That was also a ton of fun. And I really actually enjoyed hanging out with Sowers and Trey. Just overall, I thought the event was very fun.
That's awesome.
Was there a particular boss that was interesting to cast, or moment that was really fun for you to hype up? Were you around for any of the kills, or were you like the person that was always?
I casted the opening 4 hours, so I actually was around for most of the kills, and then I was also around for a lot of the Mechatorque wipes. That was the most interesting thing for me, is them like it seemed like they were wiping on heroic mechanics, so it was really weird for me. It was like,
I
oh
heard
wait,
about
why are
that.
you wiping to the heroic mechanic of this fight? It's kind of odd.
Yeah, apparently it was because a lot of the bosses were so like low tuned that they didn't really have to care about the mythic mechanics in general, so they kind of rushed through most of the mythic bosses, and then it kind of like bit them in the butt.
Yeah,
They,
I also heard that Mechatork was one of the bosses they were doing all the alts on for their like insane gearing strategies, so they weren't really like paying attention to Mechatork in that much detail, and they actually didn't realize that when you are shrunk, you
don't
don't
do
deal
Don't do
damage.
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 Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a joke at first, but I guess that was actually true. Like,
Yeah, I
how do you
also thought
handle
it
that
was a
as a
joke.
caster?
I also
Like,
thought it was a
you don't
joke.
want to be mean to Method, but how do you handle like them messing up on?
I tried to not be like overly critical over stuff like that. There was like a moment where I'm sitting there watching, and then one of their healers is sitting like in the middle next to like the boss whenever he's firing the buster shot, and I'm like, is that a healer standing there? And then you instantly see somebody pop in an angel form as the holy priest dies, and I'm just like, oh, I'm just like, I don't know what to say anymore. I'm just like, I don't want to like flame you for like dying to that, but I was like, what was that? It was weird because I also came into the event wanting to give appropriate coverage to the race itself. And even though it is like a method event, I wanted to be able to give appropriate coverage, and I felt like I was able to be somewhat critical. I didn't want to be like rude or anything, but I was able to be
Right.
critical over like some of the stuff like compositional choices or stuff like that. And I felt like okay and comfortable with doing that. While as long as you phrase it in a way that's not like being rude or mean, it's actually going to be okay.
Yeah.
And as long as you're talking about, hey, Limit has been doing XYZ, what do we think about that? And I thought overall being able to take that approach in terms of covering the race as opposed to just methods coverage was actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's really good. That's a really good skill to have as a caster in general, being able to give like it's not exactly criticism because you're not talking to them, but more like talking around the whole topic and being able to put some input that they might have not thought about, but maybe some viewers did. So then you're touching those little points that some people in the chat or some of the viewers are interested in. And that's awesome. That's great for casting.
Being able to read the chat was actually kind of cool too.
Oh, you were able to
Except when they're like, oh, limit 99, and you're like, wait, are they?
They baited me so hard so often. They're spam limit 9 out of 9 sometimes. I'm just like, refresh. I'm like, no, they're not. I was like,
yeah.
I also think that's really good, a good approach to take, especially if more guilds, do start streaming at a high level because, if Limit were to stream, you would want to be covering them as much as possible
exactly.
to
that would
raise
be so
attention
cool.
and the hype. So it would be weird if it's like, oh, like on the method stream, we're not going to talk about anyone, even if they're getting close. So I think you had a good approach for that.
Right? It's the race to world first. It's not like method. We're streaming. We're commentating
exhibition
over method.
match.
Yeah. Show match with only method. I mean, like obviously we didn't have other POVs, but we saw some of the pieces stream, and we watched a little bit of the Exorcist stream at some points, and we were kind of like seeing where they were, seeing kind of what they were doing differently in some regards, and we kind of talked about it in general. But obviously, it was more of a 2-horse race than that, so it was kind of hard, especially when Limit's not streaming progression. So it was a little bit difficult in order to be able to give it appropriate coverage because we were only speculating in terms of what Limit was doing. Additionally, we didn't have like methods log, so it was hard to speculate over some things as well. From methods,
what are your
POV
thoughts
even
on Limit not streaming? I mean, obviously they didn't for Desaro lore. They had that really detailed blog after, but then some of them had made statements saying that they weren't really interested in streaming the next year. And I know some people were kind of hoping they would be, so it would be more hype, or it'd be called like a split screen of like Method and Limit progressing on the same boss. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, obviously there's a lot of cons for an NA guild to stream, but then they do get the fans supporting them more.
I think it's difficult to get a group of people to want to go for a world first if there isn't some like singular person incentive, right? Like you're not able to build a singular brand for yourself in some regards if you're not streaming the world first progression, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to like commit to something like that, especially whenever you're like, if you want to play that much, you need some incentive.
Yeah, there's so much behind the scenes stuff people don't realize, to a viewer, it's just an interesting race. But if you're creating the event, like you need to, figure out sponsorships and casters and plane tickets and hotels and who's going to, who says what on the stream, and camera work and laptops and sponsors and all these other things surrounding it. And even if you don't do an event but you still want to stream and get sponsors, there's a lot of organizational work just to present your organization in a certain way, and do content that appeals to your sponsors, and make sure you have your hashtag tweets sent out and all these things that aren't actually related to a race.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's converting it from a WoW guild to an organization, and it's like
Right.
I don't personally know any of the steps that Method has taken from converting themselves from just like singularly a WoW guild into like an esports organization, but I think that Limit would need to make those extra steps and be able to give people a reason for them to want to be raiding for this world first, because it's hard. It's hard to say, hey, you should take a bunch of time off work in order to be able to raid for 2, potentially 3 full weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Without any compensation in terms of like, I know Josh talked about it on his stream that they threw a bunch of their donation money in a pool and split it between all the raiders. And he said it wasn't a ton of money, but it does help. And stuff like that, for you to be able to take off time from work and stuff like that, you need some incentive, I think.
Especially because the US is not as great about time off and, benefits that you get. So you sort of feel like you have to be at work more frequently.
Did you see that tweet that Now made? Because he was actually talking.
Yes, I did actually see that.
Yeah, how he thought they were going to stream in the future, but then now that they're not, he's going to focus on MDI.
Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I think it's a shame, but it's I think it's also understandable, because you're looking at a group of raiders who may not necessarily be interested in streaming. They just want to play the game. They want to get the world first. They want to push, and now maybe they, in a way, feel pressured to stream because Method is doing it. I'm sure they're getting asked to stream by everybody, and I guess it's one of those things. If one person streams, that kind of ruins it for the whole guild. So it's either everyone streams or no one streams, and they just can't reach a consensus. And I understand that Now doesn't really want to continue in that case, because he is somebody who was focused on the streaming, and he knew that Battle for Desarlor was not going to be streamed, and he was okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a risk that he took. And, now it seems like streaming and Mythic Plus is more of his passion. So, it's sad it didn't work out, but, lesson learned. And, now obviously the streaming experience is something he values more than the raiding experience. But, it wasn't like Limit was never like, oh yeah, we're going to stream Desarlor. Like he knew going into it that they weren't streaming.
Because they said they're not streaming Battle of Desarlor, but that they highly likely to stream the next one or something like that. And now they officially said they're not streaming the next one either. I think it might have been a case where Limit wanted to at least get a world first and then start thinking about the streaming part. I think it's a lot of pressure, maybe. I don't know. What do you think, Tettles?
I think NA is actually in generally pretty weird in terms of how they compare in terms of European rating.
Yeah.
Europe has like this very rigid raid structure of like the tiers of guilds, where there's this tier that there's not a lot of in NA, where it's like 6 or 7 days a week for 4 or 5 hours a night. And NA doesn't have really too many of those guilds. It's you're either in these 16-hour a week guilds, and then you jump into Limit, and there's not anything like really in between that. So there is like a pretty good progression curve for European rating. In addition to that, there's also more people just playing on the European realm in general. So I think it makes it difficult for Limit to be able to get a quality roster, especially if they don't have a lot of incentives for you to be able to convert from this 16 hours a week to like almost full time for a couple weeks schedule.
Yeah. Plus, if you look at the depth of the rating pool, if you look at Raider.io, yes, Limit was second, but when you look at a lot of the guilds that are filling out the top 10 and even 20, so many of them are EU, and US just doesn't have as much depth to that.
Yeah, agreed. Limit is a very good guild, and they have like pretty much the best players in NA. Like they have like a large majority of, I would say, the top tier players in NA, and so they're like a world competitive guild. They're very, but beyond them, there's not a lot if you want to raid in NA. So I think it's difficult to be able to like culture and create like a raid scene in NA that is actually pretty good.
Yeah, and their recruitment approach was different too, and seems to do better when you have more, like, I was gonna say very talented players, but that sounds silly. Obviously everyone's very talented, but Method's approach was more, we want to have a small team and we want them to play a bunch of alts, and it's it's like the teamwork, everyone working together. While in Limit, it seemed to be more they had a larger roster, and would take people that were like amazing or godly at maybe 1 or 2 specs, and not have those people force them to level 5 alts or else. So they seem to be taking different approaches, and if you have a smaller pool of raiders, then there's only so many 1 spec wonder people you can recruit from NA.
I think it also creates like an issue with burnout, like stuff like that, where if you don't get enough time progression and you feel like you could just even like get a close enough rank in a guild where you would see like all of the bosses, why be in limit, right? It's very difficult to justify being in limit, especially if you're not in the raid. Like if you're like on the bench,
yeah, you don't want to be pulled in for one boss. Like that's not
yeah, like
that's a different
method. Yeah, method is like an organization, and like they have like a very different dynamic in terms of how they like treat their raiders and stuff like that, because like everybody's a part of the team, and it's like and it's the thing where it's like converting it from like a WoW guild into like an organization into like a team. And I think limit is close, and if they take the correct steps, I think they could make the jump from like WoW guild into like team and organization and all these other things that they could aspire to be doing. But it depends on really what they want out of the guild.
Yeah, I mean, when you become an organization, you spend less. Some people that love the game and the organization or in the guild are going to spend less time on what they love and more time on administrative things. Like that's just how it is. So it's like, if someone wants to be a full-time streamer, it's hard to be a full-time streamer as well as someone that is, nagging sponsors and websites and all these things that you don't think of when you think like, oh, I love WoW and I just want to do competitive WoW.
And that's something that we also witnessed with Method. I mean, they went through a lot of different roster changes, especially when they split up with Serenity. Was it called Serenity? I think it was called
Serenity. Was the split off.
Yeah, the split off, and then after that there were a bunch of other merging, and at some point it was like only 3 of the original Method raiders were still in the guild, and then like they had to recruit a bunch of more people. And it's if you're starting off with we love raiding, we love the game, then you all have that same interest. But then if you're going on to organization, there's a huge risk that a lot of people who are raiding with you are not interested in that. Because just because you've now turned into an organization doesn't mean okay, now everyone has like a full-time salary. No, it's gonna be first a lot of bumps of working and probably streaming, because that helps with exposure, and a lot of other steps have to be taken that makes it really difficult for people.
I can't stress the sponsorships as much. Like just you have
some
to watch
people don't want sponsorships as well.
Right, like I want to just wear what I want to wear. I want to use my own headset. I want this. Like I want to just do what I want and not to say something every 30 minutes. Having someone out.
I don't want a logo on my screen. Like like there's so many things, and that's part of the dramas that kind of like Method had to go through as well. I mean, now they're at a very stable spot, and that's why they're able to do all these great things like hosting this kind of world first race. But it's a very difficult thing to get to. Even if Limit would start today and be like, yeah, we're gonna transfer over to an organization, it'll take time before they have like a stable roster where they can do that.
Do you think that it's an issue though, or like do you think it's something that they should be pushed? Like, do you think it will like, because Method ended up like almost killing off that roster that they ended up having, and then they had to merge with Rapid Eye Movement, like because they literally had like 3 people, like you said. So they ended up merging with Rapid Eye Movement, which in general, Rapid Eye Movement was a very good guild, so there's nothing wrong with that, and they ended up making it work in the end. But like, even though it is super risky, do you think it's a something that Limit needs to take if they want to push forward, or do you think that they're okay with just doing this kind of middle of the road kind of like top rating guild?
Well, what you mentioned kind of makes me worried then, because I was not aware that there's more European players than NA players, for example. I don't know if that's something that you know for sure is the fact. And if that's true, then that means that Limit will have even more problems, finding another guild to merge with, for example. So if they do end up having people leaving, it's going to be a lot harder to build it up again, because there's not that many other competitive guilds in like a nearby kind of level. So in that sense, I don't know, is it worth the risk?
I mean, I think that it, so if I was there, I think it would be interesting for them to try and expand. We were talking about NA versus EU, benefits, pros and cons, but for, like Red Bull has like a group, in Santa Monica, lots of advertisers and sponsorships. They have offices or even headquarters in the US. There are lots of conventions in the US. So it seems that the location is, kind of in their favor. There's lots of things that people that live in the US could do to help grow the guild because there's so many brands and events going on in NA, not to mention, Blizzard as well. And NA streaming times, that's more with Twitch prime time than EU prime time. So
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are cons where
Time-wise
if you
can
stream
definitely
the world,
work.
yeah,
Sorry,
if you
go on.
stream the world first race and you're NA, there is the big issue that you're sort of giving a lot of your strats away, which then maybe strengthens the case that you should think about making the organization more something that's like entertaining and hype and getting in on the race, and trying to grow it beyond needing the world first race, or else your organization has it doesn't have the prestige or interest behind it. But I think it would be worth trying. Obviously, it's a lot of work and you need the right sorts of people behind it. So if people want to, just raid all day, then no, it's a bad fit. I don't want to pressure anyone to do anything. But I think it would be super exciting. And who knows, maybe you could even push Blizzard to do, I don't know, global release times if they're seeing that now there's an audience for this sort of thing that wasn't the case, 15 years ago.
As for global release times, though, you have to always take into account server stability. I think is like the most important. Like if the servers aren't going to be stable, then I would say releasing them at the same time is a bad idea.
But don't you think that there was kind of a test with the expansion launching at the same time?
And it went poorly, didn't it?
Not
like,
for
there were
me.
like five.
It was like,
there were like five realms that were like down. Like Draenor EU was like down for days. Tichondrius was down for like a day. Illidan was down for like 16 hours. Area 52 was down for 16 hours. There was like a lot of realms that were just like down.
Yeah, my realm was perfect. So I can't relate.
I would almost talk about tournament realms. Like just do an invitational on Blizzard's end, put a few guilds that qualify.
But that doesn't feel real though. Like I don't know, if it feels like then it's not really your character, kind of. I don't know. But I do see what you mean though, because if it's a tournament realm, you also make it more fair in terms of gear.
Then you don't have to do all those insane like Titan Residuum runs and crafting items to disenchant and pulling it all so they can bonus roll items to trade them. And that's how the MDI is set up. Everyone is on the tournament realm. So,
and also,
I think it's different though. I think it's different because the preparation that goes into a raid is different than the preparation that goes into like the MDI, because the MDI is about strategy and stuff like that. Whereas the raid, you're pulling people like almost out of the pool of raiders in terms of, now I don't need to gear my character or ever do farm or anything ever again because I'm just going to go on the tournament realm and get all this gear for free. So I think you're going to make some issues that you don't otherwise believe that you elsewise would. I think we saw that like in PvP like many years ago where the tournament realm was open for like extended periods of time, and there were just top end players that just weren't playing like on the ladder anymore. They were just playing on the TR, and so I do think the tournament realm is like a good option, but I think it's a bad solution for like a world first rating event.
Right. There is the issue, and it isn't exactly Blizzard's responsibility to solve, but if you're a casual viewer turning into the world first race and you see Method doing alt runs with 20 priests and you're like, what? Like, I came back to WoW, why are people doing this run with 20 priests? I'm so confused. What is gearing turned to in BFA? It does impact people's perceptions of the game, even though the system is set up so 99.99% of players don't need to do method or limit preparation strategies to get geared up. It does affect perceptions of the game if, like Sko said, a lot of people that quit WoW were still watching the race.
Or maybe that's part of the fun, because then you see these like ridiculous things that the world first race people do, and then you're told like, hey, actually people don't do that. Oh, okay. So it's something that only they do.
It's to keep that in mind, because everyone is always like, oh, well, like this system is bad, like Method had to do this and XYZ, and it's like, no, you actually don't need to do this. But it just gives people a bad stereotype.
You think it can bring like a bad outcry of complaints?
Yeah, so like the insane farming strategy gets more
attention,
notoriety than how people, the actual game systems. Like when WoW had covered Josh talking about the gearing strategy, that was super popular. It's like, disclaimer, not everyone has to do this, but people just love highlighting extreme things and panicking about
But
it.
then maybe we would lack those extreme things. If everything is on tournament realm, then there's nothing to brag about. There's no 100 million debt to brag about, you know? It's just, we went in there and then we just killed stuff, you know? That's all we did. Because now it's quite interesting to look at how they're gearing and like what gear do they have and other kind of preparation. I think having those kind of crazy stories could maybe be worth that outcry, just because those crazy stories is what makes these world first races pretty interesting, I think.
Yeah. I just hate it when people ask Ian, they're like, Ian, what do you think about this type of gearing? And he always has to be like, well, Method and Limit do this, but you don't have to do this. And like it just comes up every Q&A.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's actually an issue too in terms of how they're balancing the raid. I think we saw the difficulty curve for this raid in general be lending itself to being undertuned as opposed to overtuned for pretty much all the bosses, and we've seen that for like the past 3 or 4 tiers. Not 4 tiers, I guess, just the past 3 tiers. Uldir and Antorus were both pretty undertuned.
2 was better spread out. Well, Nightmare was...
2 was overtuned.
Yeah, 2 was overtuned. Nightmare was poof.
Yeah. Nighthold I thought was very good in terms of its tuning, but they have definitely been lending themselves to undertuning a whole entire instance as opposed to tuning it appropriately, I think I would say, because I don't think it was intended that 8 of the 9 bosses died within the first like 2 days, right?
No.
Did you get a sense of that as a caster or a tester, that this raid, the early part, was going to just fall over? Or was it a surprise to you guys on the desk being like, oh, well, hurry up, new boss, guess we have to, change plans?
Well, they heavily undergear all the players on the PTR.
Right.
They'll put you at like 395 fighting the same bosses that everybody in the raid is like 405, or they'll put you like 390 or whatever it is. So they're heavily undergearing you, so you're not able to actually kill the bosses, except for like Champion the Light, which is like a meme boss. But
yeah,
that's a different fight. But I think that they're just. I think that they're testing stuff on the PTR that's not simulating real world stuff. I think they're just testing the PTR in order to make sure that like the servers are stable, the fight is not inordinately bugged in a way that they otherwise would not have. And then it's also for the players to some degree, because the players do want to see the fights a little bit, so they have a little bit more time to prep beyond reading the dungeon journal. I'm actually bad about being able to understand what a fight is doing just by reading the dungeon journal, but there are some people who are better at it than me. But
right.
I actually recognize that too. I read something and it's like, okay, that ability does that. Okay, what does that mean? Like, how am I going to need to act? Like, how does it look like? I need to see it, usually.
I think the PTR, the testing, maybe not at the start of WoW's development, but certainly now, it's a good hype tool with streamers as well. Like, I was super sad that Unot testing was delayed because that boss apparently has really cool music, and I think there's some old god whispers that are part of it, and the description sounds very creepy. So people want to get that, taste of the fight. I remember when everyone saw Jaina ice block Bloodlust the first time with testing, everyone got super hype over that and was sharing clips. So it can help generate interest in the raid when there is a lull in content as well.
Mm-hmm.
I've never thought about it like that, honestly. That is definitely an interesting discussion point, because like, are they actually doing it just to hype up their own raid? Because they're pushing it out so quickly after the raid is over. It's I've never actually thought about it like that. That's kind of cool.
I mean, the PTR for 815 started in early January. Then it just stopped when the raid came about, and then when the raid was over, it came back.
Yeah, so. I don't know. Why are they doing Crucible testing right now? They've been doing this for like the past couple of tiers, where like literally 2 or 3 weeks after like the world first kill of a boss dies, they instantly jump into like next raid testing. I think that's pretty bad for pacing for world first raiders, especially those people who are going to jump into PTR testing instantly. I feel like it is, but at the same time, I don't think Blizzard really cares. I don't think they're trying to appease the top end rating scene, which I don't like. I think that they should be. I don't think they should be catering to them, but I think they should be. There's like a work relationship that they could have that I don't think they're actively attempting to approach.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of similar to Wowhead. Obviously, when there's a patch, there's a lot of site updates that have to happen and guides that have to be written, and it's really busy for us. And then they usually start the PTR cycle right after the patch hit to keep you interested in the news. And it's kind of rough for us because we're recovering from finally, like we're nagging the guide writers to update their guides, getting the raid guides and Mythic Plus guides, and then it's this massive PTR dump on top of what's going on. So the timing isn't ideal for us, but we're a very niche specialized thing. But I almost sometimes wonder if the timing doesn't make sense because I'm like, well, there's only so much news you can handle at one point. Live and PTR at once is a little extreme. But at least it's good traffic for us, even if it's kind of an extreme.
That is true. It does give you consistent traffic, but I do think
Yeah.
it is the pacing of it. It feels very awkward, especially as a player too, right? Because I don't being in a World 30th guild. I don't want to go raid test like right now. That sounds awful.
Yeah.
I just kind of want to hang out for a little bit after progression's over, but.
Yeah, especially when some of the testing occurs before the public information is out on the fight. So if you're super casual, maybe not someone that even tests, and you're like, oh yeah, the race, I'm going to do I'm hyped about the race. I watched it. I'm going to do my LFR. And you're like, oh, Crucible? Is this on live server? Why are, people talking about Crucible? When is this coming? I don't see any Blizzard post on Crucible. I know that Wowhead always tries to do a lot with hyping the PTR stuff up, but it's not really official. We're just doing it because we think it's fun content. But I can see how a casual person can get a little confused between what's actually in the game and then what is coming soon. Everyone thought season 2 was patch 815 because information on these two things was sort of being revealed at the same time. It's no, guys, no, Zandalari is not season 2. We actually had this discussion, Tettles. You were like, do I put Kultiris and Zandalari in
dude, I thought it was coming out.
Yeah, so many people thought it was coming.
They were coming out with the raid. I was so confused. Yeah. I was like, oh, wait, hold on. I need to edit my guide. Then I literally thought it was coming out with the raid. I didn't. They're not clear with their information. Okay, Blizzard actually is pretty poor with their information whenever stuff is coming out, honestly. I feel like there's if Wowhead wasn't around to be able to give very early data mining of all the stuff and being able to give very clear explanations of when stuff is coming out, I feel like it's so confusing a lot of the time when stuff is coming out because they initially said that Zandalari Troll was coming out at the big expansion launch, and now it's just, I don't know, it's been delayed, which is fine. I just didn't know when it was coming out.
Yep.
Yeah, and the new system of calling things by names, not numbers, is also confusing because it's Tides of Vengeance. Tides of Vengeance Season 2. Ashara is a major content patch, but wait, there's 815 and the trolls are coming in the major content patch. And can we just call them by numbers 8-1?
Yeah, they called it Season 2, and I'm just is this 815? I'm I think this is the patch that cool Tyrants are coming.
You inspired me to make that Wowhead post called Season 2 is not patch 815, and everyone was like, whoa!
I didn't know.
I had so many people coming to ask me as well in my stream, so wait, are you saying the allied races are not coming next week? And I'm like, no, they're not. It's a separate patch, but it's on PTR. Yes, that's not what's coming next week. Next week is Season 2, which mainly is the raid and the new season in PvP. And
that's starting up again with that little video that didn't say when they were coming on allied races. Laura's the person who gave Laura the script was say they're coming in the next major content patch. So everyone was like, oh, major content patch, that's Ashara. So are they delayed even more? And it's no, they're coming in 815 that no one will call 815 for some reason.
Oh my god, it's actually funny. But yeah, it can be really confusing with all of these news coming in and not knowing what belongs to where.
Yeah, I've got another streaming question for Tettles that maybe you have some input in, Annie, as well. It's how do you think that streaming affects gameplay? Do you find that it can encourage a player to focus more on what they're doing when they know all these people are watching? Or do you feel like the attention and stress can detract from performance? So obviously you saw the people in the Red Bull studio, Tettles, that are not only streaming, but have cameras shoved in front of their faces and interviews. But, Annie as well, you always, stream with viewers. So any thoughts on that?
You can go ahead, Tettles. Yeah, okay. You go ahead.
So I personally find it distracts me sometimes, especially if I'll catch myself reading chat mid pull. So I make sure that it's minimized and stuff like that, especially whenever I'm doing progression, to make sure I'm not reading it mid pull, because I will catch myself doing it. beyond that, I don't know how those guys were able to even focus while they were in the sphere. Sours and I were doing keys for like maybe an hour or two, and I actually just could not focus on my monitor. I actually just kept looking at like stuff that was going on in the background, the people just like walking around. Rich and S-Fan were like doing some karate moves on one another or something in the background. I was like, what is going on? And I'm just
That
like,
sounds like Rich and
I'm
S-Fan.
sorry I just died. I wasn't like looking at my monitor. And it's like I don't know how the guys for Method were able to like be able to focus. I would assume that it detracts from performance, but they've said specifically before that it motivates them more. I find it complicated though.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. I think they were pulling over like Deep Shades and Kana for some parts to do interviews when they were on breaks. And to me that's just, I don't know, my mind is blown. Like they're performing in front of all these people. They have cameras in front of their face, and then when they finally do have a break to discuss strategy, like maybe after frustrating wipes or a breakthrough, they just like hop up on front of the camera in front of the even bigger stream and just give their thoughts. Like that's just so much mental discipline.
Mm-hmm. It's knowing that they did all that and still managed to get a world first is actually really impressive, because I do think it's true that it's I would personally feel more pressure with the attention and like, you know, racing with people who are not streaming. Then I'm like thinking about how they don't have to worry about all this attention and they might be killing it any second now and I have no idea. I can imagine that stressing me out and making me nervous, which would probably make me make mistakes as well. This is their second time, maybe not all of them, but for some of them, it is the second time of streaming progression. So maybe they're kind of getting used to it, especially the people who are used to streaming already. So they're used to, you know, a big number of people watching and they can ignore that. But I can imagine still the chats being so crazy must surely affect them somehow, like either by hyping them up or making them a little bit more nervous or something. I mean, I think I would be nervous.
Yeah, I remember I thought it was super cool but also kind of gutsy when they were having voice comms on for the world second clear, because, you know, they were messing up on the early bosses, and, you know, it's like, oh, look, you know, now someone's admitting on voice chat in front of thousands of people that they messed up. And then when you start getting to the later bosses that are more serious, it's like, wow, you're admitting your mistake that cost them a low wipe in front of all of these people listening in chat. Like, you know, you're not just admitting something embarrassing in front of your guild, which is bad enough. You're admitting something serious and annoying in front of thousands of people that are now going to make fun of you in chat.
Yeah, I think that part is the part that you become okay with if you are streaming. Yeah. Like, if I did that, I would actually feel nothing. I would not feel nervous, or, I mean, I would probably feel a bit silly or stupid, but that's okay. Like, that's what we do as streamers. It's okay to, like, be the one that's laughed at, because the pressure is gone at that point. They've already got the world first race. So I think at that point, it's not so bad if there's, you know, thousands of people out there who are laughing at you for making a mistake.
Yeah, I guess that's true. It's more like if your guild leader is like, you did something dumb, and the person is like, yes, I did. Like, oh, got scolded in front of everyone.
Yeah. No, I think like for me personally, like, that would be okay. Yeah. But when world first racing, I would be very concerned about my mistakes, because I'd feel like I'm, you know, letting the group down and we're losing because of me.
Yeah.
I feel like it's easy to tilt over like a couple minor mistakes to some regard too. Like if you're just making mistakes that otherwise you'd say whatever, pull it again. I won't do that again. Maybe you make that mistake again, and just because you start tilting a little bit easier because everybody's watching and all eyes are on you, and you're getting DM'd on Discord and messaged in game about LOL. What was that mistake? What are you doing? Like that would be pretty upsetting to me personally, because that would make me feel pretty bad. But it depends on person to person. I think it just really, I think the more times they do this, I think the better that they're going to get in terms of what they should know to expect. But I personally would find it very distracting.
Even if it's the second one?
Yes, I would find it very distracting.
No, that's good to know. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I would also say that, I mean, so obviously you have people like, you know, Sko and Josh and Ginji and, you know, like all the people at the Red Bull Sphere, how they're very accustomed to streaming, but not everyone that part of the Method organization is a streamer that's used to all these people. I mean, they're used to the insanity that, well, they are used to, I'm sure, being messaged by people that, you know, are fans or hate Method every race. They're not used to the streaming presence as well. So I'm sure for the people that don't have as many people, it's more of a learning curve. And while more of them were streaming than last race, some of them, did have they didn't have their cameras up. So, that does relieve some of the stress. Not everyone was like, oh, yeah, fly me down a Red Bull. I'm going to be all up in everyone's face. Like, I think Just Wait didn't have his camera on. And I know, he's really integral to their strategies and add-ons and all that. So not having your face and, does take the pressure off. So people don't see you, like being super serious or doing all that stuff.
I think Josh said specifically he didn't go down to London. He was like only like an hour train right away. He said specifically that he didn't go down to London because he thought that the pressure would be a little bit much for him, and he wanted to be in like a place that's comfortable and just making sure that all of the things that allowed him to play perfectly were there, even though like they can accommodate a lot of the stuff at the Sphere, but at the same time it's like a lot different playing from there as opposed to playing from home.
Like all the little tics you have when you're at home, like being able to stretch or jumping up and down, or if you make a noise, or just being messy, or getting up to go to the bathroom, like all these little things, or just dressing how you want if you're playing in your PJs, but now you have to have like makeup and wearing a jersey, and it's just all these extra little factors that you take into account.
No, I want to raid in boxers. I'm not traveling.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, I completely agree.
As a reminder, for people watching in chat, if you have questions and we're not answering them, either about what's new this week in WoW or related to the race, you can send them to Sass. And I also forgot we have a giveaway going on. Good job, me. The giveaway.
I actually saw Sass a little bit upset about it. Like, hello, have you guys mentioned the giveaway?
Well, it was the giveaway.
We were always mid-conversation, so it's like it was always awkward. But now is a good time to mention it.
Yeah, the giveaway is for a Moonkin hatchling because Tettles is a boomkin. It's a pet you can't get any longer, but we bought some in advance. We can give them
unobtainables.
Yep, the keyword is hoot. So HOOT. It's the noise like owls make.
Can you make that noise for us, Tettles?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, there you go.
Yep.
There you go. Should have been Flap. Yeah.
Yeah. So we will be picking the winner towards the end of the show, and Moonkin hatchling in honor of Tettles. And I believe you get the Alliance looking version and then the Horde looking version, so you get like two pets in one.
Indeed.
This next question we kind of covered a little bit before, but just reiterating it. Some guide writers, I think Archie submitted this, wanted to know like what are the pros and cons of a guild or player streaming progression, and we covered that a bit with like if you're a guild streaming, if you want to be big, you have to become an organization, and even if you are a smaller guild streaming, obviously there's the risk that if your guild loses people or if you disband, then that's not good news if you're streaming. But I think with this race, we've seen that it's not like an I win button. If you stream, you get people. Like so many guilds were streaming and they didn't get nearly close to the viewership as Method.
Because you need a team for that. Like there's people working for Method who are not raiding, right? And
exactly,
you need all of those extra people to make it work. And I don't think there's any other guild that has that type of organization. And no guild can get that overnight either. Like Method has been working for this for years to get where they are now.
Yeah, I think this is their third year doing it. So,
being an
writer's
org?
chat's cracking me up. Yeah, sorry, writer's chat is just making me laugh. I think this is their third year being an org, and it's for the first few years they weren't streaming. They were just trying to set the framework to be sustainable and get sponsors and think about other games as well. Because sponsors don't want to be like, oh yeah, just the raid race. They want to be like, okay, well, what are you going to do for the rest of the year? And what happens if the race? Oh yeah, that's a good question for Tettles. So did you guys have contingency plans, like what happens if the race is over in a day, or if it's another Tomb of Sargeras that's 3 weeks, or like what do we say? How do we react if like Limit does well, or like like another guild like just like beats us on everything? Did you guys have any like backup scripts or plans for that?
No, we said we would talk about it once whatever happened, right? Like there was some contingency plans if it went super long, but nothing if it was like over in a day.
Yeah, I remember it seemed that you guys were a little taken by surprise when the Jaina hotfixes occurred. How something happened in phase 3. I forget the exact thing, but it sort of made you guys. They had to rethink the strat, and it was suddenly like, okay, like raid's not going on. Go back to the desk. Like entertain everyone while the guild like panics and sorts out their strat. Being ruined for a half hour.
Oh, was that
or
the
so.
change with the elemental?
Yeah, I remember in phase 3 that something was hotfixed and they couldn't do their strat, and then it got unhotfixed.
Yeah. I think it was
right
elemental
after.
where it got changed so that you
Yeah.
have to kill it or something.
Yeah,
I don't
something
remember
like
exactly.
that.
Yeah.
They changed the cast to where it casted regardless, but then they hot fixed it again after like another 20 or 30 minutes.
Mm.
I think the strategy that Method was using was still going to be okay, even if the elemental is casting Frost Nova. But I think that boss is very difficult to kill if that ad is casting Frost Nova. I think that boss is almost unkillable at that point.
So it would
What did you
keep
think-
casting Frost Nova.
It would cast Frost Nova regardless. So basically, the issue with it is that the Frost Nova is like the lowest priority cast that the boss has. So if you keep interrupting it after the lockout, it'll just start casting its cast again, and you just kick it again. So there's no loss, right? But if you miss the kick, then it casts Frost Nova and roots everybody and gives everybody a bunch of stacks or whatever. So you have to make sure that you're kicking it over and over again. Whereas like if it automatically casts the Frost Nova, you have to take the ad out of melee every so often. Where it is doable to be able to burn the boss like that, it is significantly harder in terms of tank movement, especially on a fight which tank movement is not the easiest because there's like a frontal cone ability while the tanks are also just getting pushed in pretty heavily. They're taking a pretty large amount of damage over the course of that whole entire fight.
So what did you think of Method's strategy? Like it seemed that it took them a while to kind of coalesce and just decide that was the strategy they were going with. Did you think it was like a really solid strategy? Did you think that at the start that Limit was going to beat them? I mean, obviously we didn't know their strat. We just heard, vague ideas they were in phase 3, but did it seem to be a doable strat? Were you like on board or were you skeptical as the phase 3 wipes were happening?
Initially, I was not convinced with the strategy, but then they so I talked to them a little bit off broadcast and we talked about the strategy and stuff like that, stuff that they didn't want spoken about on broadcast, but I guess in retrospect now it's fine to talk about. But like there was stuff like being able to DPS the boss whenever, because it's not immune, so being able to DPS it during the wall, that was pretty good. And there was stuff that just made the damage check achievable that otherwise would not have. And they were also using their lust in order to be able to like break down the wall, but at the same time have people be hitting the boss at the same time, so that they were getting the boss phased about 26 or 27%. So where it otherwise probably would not have been achievable, because if you had to start with the boss at 30%, it's significantly harder. Whereas starting with it at 26 or 27%, it did look doable. I was pretty skeptical, if I'm going to be honest here. I did not know if the strategy was going to be able to be done at that gear level, but they very clearly were able to do it with 80k HPS from a Disc Priest, and like their healing composition was so good for that fight. It was double Restoration Shaman, double Disc Priest. Double Disc Priest gave you like all the damage that you needed to be able to make sure that you made the check, especially at those early gear levels. And their comp for that fight was pretty good.
Yeah, it was also a very clean kill. I mean, obviously they had the planned deaths, and I think someone ended up dying at the end that got res, but they had everyone standing at the end of the fight, which usually don't think of with first kills.
No,
very different
exactly,
than Limit, where it was like the paladin in a bubble that was only standing. I also thought it was interesting.
I think most guilds are like that too, where they have like one person like with a block or a bubble like as the last person standing. I think that's a pretty common.
I was also going to say it was interesting how Method was obviously streaming their strat, but Limit had a very different usage of heroism, bloodlust. Well, I guess everyone's bloodlust because they're trolls. And
that's actually true.
Yeah, and when we saw, it seemed that they went with things in a slightly different direction. So it would have been cool to see that stream being like, oh, like two very different strategies. Who's going to win? But I just thought it was interesting how they actually did very different things, and it wasn't Method did this, so we're going to do this as well, changing strats.
Well, I think they commented. You go on. Sorry.
What did you guys think about the race changing like during the middle of the instance? Like not them changing to troll. No. Like the lore aspect of it, of like being split. Like whenever you're fighting Rastakhan, your alliance. Whenever you're fighting Jaina, your horde.
I think that's awesome. Asking us a lore question. Because Tettles is not the biggest lore person.
I don't know why. I just know that it happens.
Yeah. I mean, I think that would be the only way it would make sense for story purposes. Although I don't think that was conveyed enough to casual players because there's so many
people were so confused.
Why is Jaina evil? Like, why am I fighting her? It's like, no, it's not you. But for narrative purposes, I thought it was very interesting how, if you are Alliance, you have one dialogue before Rastakhan, but if you're Horde, it's being retold to you. So the narrator embellishes it more to make Greymane seem more menacing and Rastakhan seem more noble. So I think that it's sort of like if if you're reading a book or how factual is history, who's embellishing what. I think it's interesting to look at it from that perspective, but it could have been explained a lot more. Also thought it was interesting how if you switch to one race, it means that Blizzard doesn't need to worry about racials as much. I mean, while certain, if you're Alliance and you swap to Horde, you can't, you are swapping to a specific race. You can't swap to any Horde race you want, but it's not like, oh man, is this Alliance race going to be overpowered? You just have to worry about the boss being adjusting to one faction set of racials, not both set of faction racials. So maybe that helped them tune the bosses so they would avoid, like a Mythic Zool situation.
I bet you could actually escape artist off the dot on Mythic Jaina.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm pretty sure. Funny. I'm pretty sure you would actually be able to if you were able to be. What is it? Gnome? Is a gnome escape artist,
gnomes,
or is it dwarf?
Yeah.
That's
yeah. That reminds me how the cape, I think, from Mechatork has a special bonus that is only activated if you are a gnome, but everyone is not a gnome at the time, so it sort of like sneaks in under the radar. And then people realize it after the fact, like, oh, I killed Mechatork. I have this weird cape that, look, it does an extra effect. I think reduces the cooldown of Escape Artist. But yeah, just a side note. But I think it's interesting to explore. And like I said, I think maybe it helped Blizzard not have to worry about overpowered racials as much, essentially negating half of them off the bat. I wonder, I mean, the earlier bosses were kind of pushovers, but I almost wonder... Everyone had this idea that Rastakhan would be an end boss like Jaina, and he clearly wasn't. But I wonder if Rastakhan truly was an end boss, if you'd start seeing like top end raiders like start gaming the system and be like, oh, like I'm going to change my character so it translates into the better Alliance race for Rastakhan, stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Jaina only got like that because of Voodoo Shuffle being ridiculous and getting you like a second reset on a 2 stack of the dot. Otherwise, it wouldn't have really mattered. But then, obviously, Voodoo Shuffle was not working as intended, I think.
Yeah, what do you think of that announcement hotfixed yesterday that Chilling Touch duration was changed and Voodoo Shuffle no longer benefits you on that?
I instantly ticketed to try to get back to High Mountain Torn,
really?
but they declined it. Yeah, of course I did.
No, I mean, really, as in they changed that?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay.
They told me no. They told me that they weren't going to appease my ticket because, like, I just wrote it. I was like, well, I would honestly troll because of Voodoo Shuffle because I needed it for the fight, but now I don't actually want to be troll. I much prefer to be High Mountain. And they're like, no, we're not swapping you back. I'm like, well, I tried, I guess.
It's interesting because in Hearthstone, when something is nerfed, you can disenchant it for full price.
Disenchant your character.
Well, you disenchant the cards to get the currency back. So it would make sense kind of to be able to go back if the reason that you race changed is now gone. But yeah, I mean, it is a little bit of a far-fetch. I
figured with the timing of it, they wanted it done before. They figured that, the race is over. The guilds that are fighting for bragging rights in the top 10 is over. So maybe now is a good time to, change it.
They probably didn't like it when they realized what's happening. But, it would really suck if they suddenly changed it mid-progress when, maybe 100 people or more people just race changed because of that. That would be quite
and it'd be
awkward.
really bad if it was like, oh, well, Method has it, but now we're going to just change it before Limit can do it. Like it would
Oh
just
yeah.
that would be
They
really
had to
weird and
wait.
unfair.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I wonder if Human Trinket would have worked on the block. Because I don't know if you guys knew, but at the beginning, I don't know. I think this was before Mythic was released, though. I think it was during the Heroic Week where you could use this old potion that breaks you out of a stun to get out of the ice block. And you could also use, for example, Mage Blink to get out of it. So if you would have been able to be a human, maybe the human racial would have also taken you out of the ice block. But that was changed, I think, right before Mythic was released, so it didn't really affect.
I mean,
the
it
Mythic
depends
race.
on how they changed it, right? If they changed the ice block itself to not being able to be broken by stun through living action potion or IBF or Mage Blink, then
it
it would
would
be a
probably
little bit
stop the human too, right?
they may have whitelisted just those abilities from breaking it, right? It depends on
Yeah.
how
Yeah, it
they
depends how they
approach
did it. Yeah,
balancing it and changing.
it would be interesting
Yeah.
though. Like imagine that, like everyone goes human, just to have that trinket. But yeah, it was changed anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But it's I just thought it was an interesting thing.
Yeah. So, since you've now, casted a race, and we also discussed ways to maybe normalize things or how guilds should develop in the future, where would you like to see the mythic race go in the future? It can be like pie in the sky predictions, like I want Blizzard to normalize things, or it could be, it would be cool if Method had even more players at the Red Bull Gaming Sphere. What would you like to see happen in Rise of Ashara or Crucible's kind of awkward because I feel it could be over by the time EU starts, but yeah, maybe even Crucible.
I think Rise of Ashara is more. I think you're correct with that. I don't think Crucible is like a really good from like a business perspective or in terms of like a timing thing where it's only like a 2-boss raid and it can just die. So I think Rise of Ashara is a little bit better. I personally would like Limit to go to like, I don't know, the gaming sphere in LA and fly like a couple of their players out and then being able to have like a side by side kind of like event thing, whereas like the real race to world first. And then like if Exorcist or whoever else thought that they were actually going to push for world first as opposed to like being significantly behind, I guess, then they would be able to also participate in terms of like this race as well, right? But I think that it requires more support and it's a logistical nightmare, honestly. It is very difficult in order to be able to fund and be able to get all of those people out to where they need to be. So I think it is very complex. However, hypothetically, I would like Limit to be able to have like a side by side with Method in terms of like a real race.
Yeah, I would like that too. And then all the things that go along with it, like starting on equal time so Limit doesn't feel like they are, like killing their progression. But yeah, like it'd be awesome. Just have everyone at the Red Bull Sphere, multiple teams. I think it would be cool if there was some sort of prize pool, although it's very different than, MDI or Arena because there's so many more people involved.
Yeah, like what would the
But-
prize pool have to be for it to be significant?
Yeah. But I thought SCO had like a wrestling belt that had the Method logo on it. It would be fun if there was a cup or something that the top guilds like.
Wait, does
I
he
don't know,
really?
Yeah, for Christmas, I think Haunted maybe gave it to him. Yeah, it's like a wrestling belt with like
That-
a championship belt.
That's
So-
actually really
so
cool.
good.
Yeah, so I don't know, just some friendly camaraderie between the guilds would be interesting, just to have like a Hall of Fame where you pass around a wrestling belt, or you have a cup with everyone's, I don't know,
I mean, they
etched
kind
into
of did
it.
that with the Hall of Fame, like World 100 achieved, didn't they? Isn't that
Yeah,
what
but
that's supposed to?
Yeah,
I
but
know
so
what
like
you're
an
saying.
actual thing that you could raise above your head on a stream.
I don't think Blizzard has any obligation to do that kind of thing, though.
Yeah.
So I don't expect anything. I would like it, but I don't think Blizzard is actually going to say that this is worthwhile investment in terms of what they are going to be able to do. If they do, and they're trying to push WoW esports even further in terms of like, I think the issue is that this isn't like an esport. This is like an event.
Right. Yeah, it's not Blizzard involvement. So even things like prize money suddenly get sticky because then you need licensing, and that's a whole nother mess with fees and what can be approved. And
Yeah, I think it's difficult to have Blizzard involved at all too, because they're such like a large corporation. They have like a whole entire legal team that has to like vet pretty much every single portion of it. Whereas like as like a startup from like a ground up grassroots kind of thing, I think Method is a little bit more, I don't want to say they're better equipped, but I think that they have a better scope of what they want to be able to see, whereas Blizzard is trying to look for like a very large return on the investment and some.
Right, and Blizzard also has to take into account the game perception. So, going back to what we're talking about, tournament realms, the MDI can exist on a tournament realm, and people can stream their strategies leading up to it. But with the raid race, it's harder to endorse something if it's not totally about the race or the skill. But if it's like, okay, well, now everyone is going to go 100 million into debt and like trade Azerite and do alt runs of only cloth users, suddenly Blizzard PR has to think about how that would impact their game, and is this the image they want? Because like Blizzard PR is very concerned with their image and what's said officially, and that could be a nightmare for them. 20 people running around that they are difficult to control, doing things in unintentional, very specialized ways.
I think it's also
marathon periods.
Yeah, I think it's also difficult to do like game development and like hot fixing like bigger issues during the fight, especially if you are streaming the race, and especially if you are hiring like commentators that are like, oh, they can't talk about like how I just hot fixed like mid pull like 4 stacks and stuff like that. I think it gets into like a little bit of like a wishy-washy situation in terms of what can and cannot be said as well.
Right, and then especially if those guilds have other sponsors, then it's like, well, how are you promoting like this business organization over this other business organization? And
I think you mentioning sponsorship is a big thing, actually, because that's another thing. Like, if you look at it from Blizzard's point of view, like, they look at Twitch, like, sure, there's a lot of viewership, but, like, everything is method. Like, do you want us to promote method? Like, where are the other teams? Like, there has to be at least a few other teams, or guilds, rather, like Method, that are up there competing for it to be worth it for Blizzard to actually, put their foot in and make it even bigger. Because at this rate, it's like, yeah, we'll have a world first race, but only one of the guilds are actually streaming. Or one of the 2 top ones are actually streaming. The other one, we hope that they'll stream, but we don't actually know if they will. So there's no reason for Blizzard to make their own event out of this if there's not content to cover.
Yeah, I'm sensitive to this also, with Wowhead. Like, we get linked with customer support things, and for sometimes it's like, yeah, well, no one else has a database that's, in Italian, so that's why Italian's linking it. But I know I've gotten customer support emails where they'll link, they'll try to link 3 or 4 sites, like with Legion artifact weapons, they try to make sure lots of sites get interviews with things at BlizzCon, even things like the Wowhead party. I know sometimes when we ask for merchandise, they try to make sure that other parties or organizations can also have prizes to give away. So they don't really want to have monopolies or make it seem like they are sponsoring a group or like only one person that, is also, financially benefiting from their game, whether it's, a streamer or an organization or a site. They try to build more of a community around it where they can promote different, groups and viewpoints.
Yeah, monopolies are just really bad for big corporations like that. And then on top of that, if the certain websites or teams or guilds that they're supporting has specific sponsors, that makes it even more complicated, because then they're indirectly supporting that sponsorship, and they may not be interested in doing that.
Right, or the PR nightmare of like, oh, well, this sponsor did something we don't like, or this sponsor, I suppose someone is like super promoting Apex Legends and Blizzard is like, oh, wait, actually, like, now everyone's going to go to the sponsor and like there's Apex Legends everywhere, and this is like now bad for, like, why are we indirectly sponsoring like another game? And it gets very weird. But yeah. I feel like this is a little meta. It's something I have to think about a lot. I think you guys have to as well, like streaming and thinking about like the organizational side of things. But I feel like the average player doesn't think about any of these sponsorship things, but there's sort of this big sort of headache or like looming thing you always have to think about when you do more administrative stuff or business things.
I think it's something that people want to do, but I think it's something that's difficult to achieve.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I also think that they don't have anything really to gain in terms of like what would they get out of this? I don't think they're going to gain any sponsors for their game. I think it's like I think it's a cool community event. And I think it probably should stay that way.
if they tried to maybe normalize the start time, I feel that that could generate more viewers and then in turn maybe generate more active subscribers, because we even saw an uptick to Wowhead's coverage from Dazarlor over Uldir, and obviously way fewer people are playing in Dazarlor. Let's be real. I mean, Uldir was right when the expansion hit. So, maybe if they could do a few things to nudge it along, that would be good, but I don't see them full blown wanting to jump in and do it because it's already a robust community event.
Yeah, I apologize for the window sounds. I think I can actually
All right.
disconnect this. There we go. No more window sounds. That was my headset. I apologize.
1 second, someone's messaging me about a typo.
All right, no worries. No worries. Well, moving on to some of the other questions. Tettles, do you want to talk about the work that goes into your Wowhead guides? Like, what do you do with the guides?
Okay, so it's actually like a lot more preparation than it is writing out like the actual guide and like formatting and all that other stuff. The formatting is not super strenuous in terms of time, but it's a lot of more back end work in terms of making sure that the sims are correct, making sure that the information is accurate, making sure that all of the stuff is correct and is written in a way that most players are able to understand. Because obviously I could write a guide for more advanced players, but that's not what we want. I think that's safe to say that's not exactly what we want. We want a guide that's more comprehensive in terms of like everybody can understand like what is going on. Like a beginner to intermediate guide in terms of, and there's obviously some more advanced sections. Like I think we've added a little bit more advanced sections. Like for Balance Druid, it's literally titled Mastering Moonkin or something like that. So
I think
but
that's
there's
fair
more
enough.
advanced sections too. But like it's a lot more. It's a lot more behind the scenes work in terms of making sure that all the sims are correct. And if I didn't have I have like a decent amount of friends in terms of being able to help me make sure that all the information is correct and make sure that the sims are done and make sure that all the stuff is set up. And that's actually super important. So just big shout out to all those guys, Gender, Gas Tank, Goosey, Nick, Bora, all those people who helped me out.
That's a lot of
definitely. We actually have like a 30 or 40 person Discord where we share like it's like a lot of high end, like a lot of the high end Balance Druid communities in there, and then a bunch of the like a decent, like all the theory crafters are in there too, and then we just kind of bounce ideas off one another in terms of what we think should actually be played versus what will sim the highest, because a lot of the time it's not the exact same thing, right? It could just be this might sim higher, this is a little bit better to play on this event because of XYZ reason. So you kind of have to think about it more of like a practical approach a lot of the time as well. It's less about sims too and more about like what is the player base actually likely to use.
Yeah, and it's also explaining it, because I mean a lot of these sim tools are public for people to use, but a lot of people want to know why they should use it, or what they should do as far as utility in a different situation, or maybe what they should do if they feel they're not the best player and they're more unfamiliar and they want to learn and get better, or they're following the sims but they're still dying or not doing good DPS, so they want to know how to improve. So there's a lot of this providing context for the sims as well. I feel
I think people overvalue sims a lot too. Like whenever I look at logs, I get DM'd to look at logs a pretty decent amount, and the first thing I'll look at is like your uptime or how much you're actually able to like chain cast on a boss, right? Making sure that you're able to fill like all your globals and stuff like that might not be readily apparent to newer players. I think that's one of the most important concepts that's overlooked by a lot of players is just how much time you're able to sit there. And as a heavy caster, being able to sit there and cast consistently and minimize your movement is very important. And I think it's overlooked for a lot of other like minor things like Azurite or even talents, because some of the time that's like a pretty big damage differential if you had X Azurite versus Y Azurite, whereas a lot of the time you can always, your play is the easiest thing to improve. Like getting random pieces of gear from Titan Forging is not like, oh yeah, let me go farm Shrine of the Storm 100 times for this piece. But no, you can just sit there and you can actually just, you can always like self-improve. And I think that's like the biggest thing that I like to push is look at yourself and look at what you can improve first, and then look at the other things like Azurite or talents or whatever else secondary. Because like understanding when you should be picking the talents is important, but the talents aren't going to make or break your damage realistically.
Yeah. We also did an article recently. I don't think you contributed to it, but some other Druid writers did on how the meta can skew perception. And we try to give a lot of examples and basically concluded with, you should play what you like, even if it's not, the super exciting
strongest.
spec of the week, and how things can get exaggerated, or nuances are missed when people just look at the meta superficially. So I think what you're saying is tying into that as well. Instead of like complaining that you're not the perfect spec or you don't have the perfect Azurite, you can still have fun for most players.
Yeah, WoW is very much a trickle down effect in terms of like the top player base definitely determines what the large majority of the player base is going to be playing, and it's kind of stupid. I actually don't like that.
Yeah.
I feel like having fun is by far the most important point.
Yep.
That's why I play Moon. Fun class.
Speaking of fun, for our kind of final question before we get into some of the topics of the week, the Wowhead writers, specifically Guilty and Biceps, they would say, who is Jaina, and explain the plot of Dazara lore in your own words.
All right, if I'm gonna be real, I don't know why Jaina is relevant at all. She is some frost mage woman. Who is she? She's an alliance frost mage. That's all I know about her. What's the plot of Battle of Dazara lore? So from what Guilty has told me, because I actually just don't know, and I got actually flamed pretty hard a couple weeks back for not knowing this. It was like, apparently the alliance are upset that we burned down the tree, so they're sieging Dazara lore, and then I don't know why the Horde are going after. I don't know why the Horde are going after Jaina. Wait, hold on. Wait, did she stop the? Hold on, wait. Did she stop the Horde, and now we have to fight her because she's upset?
Why
are we fighting her?
She led the assault on the city, which ended in their king being killed. So they're angry with her for killing the king.
Yeah, no, I missed that part. I don't watch the cutscenes. I don't know. I don't know why the Horde are fighting her, but I know that it needed to be trolled.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's other people here in the chat who are just like you. They're just, too shy to admit that. So thank you, Tettles, for representing all of those guys. They really appreciate you.
Yeah.
Sours, I know I killed Rastakhan. I don't know why I killed Rastakhan.
Your new
yeah, I was gonna say, but because you said I didn't watch the cutscenes, and I was like, well, it's not a cutscene, it's a boss fight. But I wanted to be nice.
I don't know how I got there. I just walked up there. Just followed the rest of my guild.
You're casting method killing the boss, but you weren't sure.
They showed some 45-minute novel video, and I was not paying attention.
Hey, that was a collaboration I did with Novel. Like, I have the written version.
I'm sure it is an excellent video, and if you have not checked it out, make sure to check it out. I, on the other hand, have never seen it.
That was actually really funny. That's a great question.
Going back to your question, what we thought of the changing races, I think that was meant to sort of drill in people's heads that there were two sides to the fight, and you should learn more about the lore that's going on.
Oh, is it like a flashback?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I knew that. I know that. Doesn't make sense. I don't know.
You are playing the flashback.
Yes, the Horde did not kill Rastakhan.
Well, okay.
Your
alliance at that point, right? And then after Rastakhan, you go into the flashback.
That's what some of the alliance did not kill. The alliance did not attack Jaina.
Okay, this makes sense now.
Mind blown.
I don't know what to say. I didn't know.
That's okay. Now you do.
I was Night Elf.
Now you can teach everyone.
Shadow Meld didn't work on any of the fights, really.
Shadow Meld didn't work. Yeah, I noticed that my stun didn't work. Wait, I just realized I don't think I've once used my damage cooldown as a troll.
Oh no!
I just realized.
What?
Yeah,
Hold on.
I don't think I ever used it.
Good.
I'm not used to it.
I feel like I told the Wowhead writers to put sections in their guides being like, explain racials, so if you're confused in Dazara lore.
I knew it in theory, but I don't think I've ever used it in practice. And maybe people can confirm with my logs. Like, I don't think I've ever used it. The troll racial for damage.
It's okay. Nobody should be Worgen anyways. So yeah, everybody should be Night Elf and
Oh wait, actually,
Night
never
Elf
mind. I'm not even a troll.
No,
I'm an
Brightpaw.
undead. I just realized. It's fine.
High Mountain
See?
Torrent also is
See,
good.
I didn't miss anything. I'm fine. I'm actually undead. I'm not trolled. Yeah, never mind. Well, let's go back
Right,
2
Bobby,
minutes.
your butt
This
out of the
conversation
camera.
did not happen. I don't know why I thought I was a troll for a second. Did you talk
Right,
about being a
Paul.
troll? Oh, we talked about Method being troll for the
Yes,
last
all
fight.
of Method
Okay,
was a
okay.
troll. Yeah.
I was mind blown for a second. I was like, oh my god, I've never used the haste buff. But this explains it. I was never troll. All right.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So for this next part of the show, we usually go over what hit recently on the PTR. Some of this is story stuff, so Tettles, you can not comment, or maybe it'd be entertaining if you did want to comment, being like, "Whoa!" Like I saw a cutscene for the first time. But we actually have some kind of class and gear-related things that may be interesting to you as well. If you want us to discuss something more on the race, send your questions to Sass, and we can address them towards the end of the show again.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the first topic we wanted to cover is how the racial shrines work in Dazar for the Zandalari trolls.
Mm-hmm.
There's this one racial called Embrace of the Loa, and you can go to a shrine in the capital city, and every 5 days embrace a different Loa, which means your racial does something different. And this seems really intricate and customizable next to other races. And the cooldown is kind of interesting as well because you can change it, more than once every reset, but you can't, change it every other minute. So, what's your thoughts on how useful the Zandalari racials are? And are you cool with the cooldown being 5 days? Do you think it should be longer or less?
I think the cooldown being 5 days is so awkward. Like I'm like a hybrid player, right? So I play Druid.
Yeah.
Occasionally I need to heal, or God forbid if I ever had to tank, that would be awful. But most of the time I either heal or play DPS, so I'm okay. But like, what if the healer one is super important and you need it, whereas the DPS one is kind of wishy-washy? And if you're swapping between the two, it's like the reforging on your Azerite. It's like
Awkward.
it's like an awkward change for no real benefit. I mean, I just hate that it's 5 days. If it was like 12 hours or something, I don't think it'd be that big of a deal. But the fact that it is 5 days is really awkward. Additionally, the fact that I think they're going to have a difficult time balancing them to where they're all wanting to be taken at some point. I thought they actually did. Yeah.
How do they seem next to the other racials? I mean, yeah, they had the vague post yesterday saying, "Oh, regenerating is going to have another pass," but how do they seem next to everyone else in general? It also seems a bit odd that they get to essentially customize their racial, once every week, while everyone else is sort of stuck with the same racial. Like that does seem to be an interesting edge or benefit that not everyone gets.
Yeah, that heal definitely needs another pass, like you said.
Yeah.
There's also there's the one that gives like 4% crit, depending on the procs per minute. That one could be ridiculous for most specs in the game. 4% crit is a pretty sizable.
Yeah, 4% is a lot.
Yeah, it's where did
it just
go?
really kind of depends on how they're tuned, though. At the end of the day, because like as DPS, you're just going to take what's the highest.
Yeah, whatever sends highest.
Yeah,
highest
the
damage,
embrace
yeah.
of Paku, 1 proc per minute. Abilities grant you 4% critical strike for 12 seconds. And then you can also take that with the healing abilities, the damage and healing, movement speed, bleeding over 6 seconds, and it stacks, and getting health and armor.
Yeah, no, so some of those are like very clearly for tanks and for healers, right?
Yeah.
Whereas that Paku one, which is the 4% crit on a 1 proc per minute, did you say for 15 seconds?
12 seconds. I'm refreshing the page because we had a PTR build right before the show, so I'm just making
Checking
sure
if it's an update. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyways, for like if it has high uptime, then that's actually going to be ridiculous because a lot of the classes just have like 1 or 2% passive stats like permanently, whereas if it's like a proc per minute thing, depending on the tuning, it could be better or worse. Like it really just comes down to the tuning in terms of like, are DPS going to play it? And I think that's an issue with WoW in general, is that there's like a big trickle down effect from the top end where people say, oh, that's not meta, why aren't you playing XYZ? Then they swap to XYZ and they make it meta. It's the same thing as all the Alliance players swapping to Horde between Tuma Sargeras and Antorus, like to some degree. Like all of the Mythic Plus players are Horde because Arcane Torrent was so strong, and additionally, Goblin Leap was almost mandatory for some classes on Kil'jaeden, so a lot of guilds also swapped to Horde at that point too. So it's just like one of those things that it depends on. It's like a really big trickle-down effect.
Yeah, and it seems Blizzard is trying really sort of too little too late to balance things out again. We saw that sort of with humorous effect when Limit then went Alliance to get the special gear, but even things like Hall of Fame to, I guess, incentivize people to raid as Alliance and hopefully get a special title. So if they, again, have a Horde racial that is, overpowered and customizable, while, Cool Tier and humans are more straightforward and generic, that's also going to cause more problems.
Do you think this could be because of these Zendlar trolls being so delayed? So because of the extra time that they had, where like Zendlar Troll was probably done as a model a long time ago, but from what Ian said, the main reason it was delayed was because of the Coltiran. So maybe in that time, what they did was spend more time in actually making Zendlar Troll more special, because not only do they have customizable racial, like you said, different racials to choose from, now they also have different altars or different shrines where they pray to change it. Like that's very special. No other race has that.
Yeah, I think there's something that they were done earlier, so they had more polish. I remember data mining the icons and the names of the racials back in January from the very first build, but not what they did until December.
Okay.
But I do think it would be weird for them to, I mean, maybe it's the case, for them to really polish Sandalari and then have Kultiran be more of an afterthought. I think that would be, not really fair to Kultiris if one race seemed to be more special with, additional things. But I mean, yeah, you do have a point. Like right now, the Zandalari racials do seem more interesting with shrines, and there's more stuff going on there than there is with Kultiris.
With any race, really, like in terms of racials, I don't know. It's just, but okay. So you're saying that the names of the racials were done like a long time ago.
Very first BFA Alpha build, the names were in.
Okay, so the racials is an old story, kind of. Okay, so it's nothing new.
Well, they could have refined the concept.
Of course, and maybe added the shrines as a later thought.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that could have been possible, but Kultiris, I feel like could get a little more special, especially because everyone was like, "Oh, they're just humans, but they're just different sized humans."
I mean, what they have that's special is a completely unique new model, right? Because Zendlar trolls are just trolls, really. With a bit of special effects on them.
Yeah, and standing upright. But it's just hard to get rid of the perception that it's like, well, Kultiris are different, but they're just a human.
Do regular trolls
they're special.
Do regular trolls also get to stand upright?
No, only the orcs have the chiropractor upright option.
Okay. All right. So I guess standing upright makes it special too.
Yeah. And slightly more of a lore bent, we have the Zandalari troll unlock scenario. We data mined hints, and due to bugs on the PTR, we were not able to preview it until this past week. Basically, we see that Talanji is cardinated as queen, not really a spoiler, because obviously she's next in line for the throne. And then we see her undergo a special ritual where the different Loa test her to prove that she is worthy to be a queen. Except that Bwansamdi is now taking the place of Razan, and his trial is a bit more disturbing or unique than that of the other Loa. I don't know if you want to play the clip quickly. I think it's just a minute or two of this part.
I think it's a pretty good clip, so I'll play it.
But yeah, Tettles will learn something.
Should I turn the audio on?
I can link it to you in the.
It's in the notes too.
Twitch chat, or just click it in the notes. It might be awkward to watch it on the stream with a delay. All right, let's watch it.
You dare stand in the place meant for Razan? Does your arrogance have no limit, Bwansamdi?
Mind your manners, child. Will Bwansamdi be raised above all other Loa?
Test me and be
Just
done with this.
like your father said. So, what brings you to visit lonely old Bwansamdi? Well, Since you be so eager to get rid of me, I got a new deal for you. Bring me the head of the Horde's war chief, and I be forgetting all about your father's bargain.
Oh, by the law. No, the Horde stood beside us when all seemed lost. I will not repay them with betrayal.
That's your final answer?
It is. My freedom is not worth my honor.
That is a real shame. Been wanting a war chief spirit for a long time. But go on. Claim your crown.
All right, that was the end of the scene. That was huge. I actually only saw
Yeah.
that today. I had never seen it
Yeah.
before since I don't play Horde. But it sounds like, or it doesn't sound like, it is clear that somebody wants Sylvanus's head.
Yep. And if you look in the background, Vol'jin is just chilling there.
I
So
saw
it's
the
like, is
comment,
he-
so I had to look
Yeah.
back again to see that.
Yeah. Yep, he's there. And yeah, so obviously Talanji says no, but it raises so many questions such as,
Why?
you know, like Bronsamdi was really keen. Tettles is learning so much about lore, but you know, Rastakhan had a deal with Bronsamdi. That's why the encounter was the way it was, with Bronsamdi helping him. And Bronsamdi now has Rastakhan's soul because, you know, he's dead, but he wants more. He wants Sylvanus now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, is her soul even more special than having the, you know, Zandalari,
Mm-hmm.
you know, king's soul? Why does he want her soul?
Are you familiar with the deal that somebody made with the king, Tettles? No, that's
No.
okay. So basically,
okay,
he made a deal with the king, and which was tied to his whole future bloodline. And Talanji, the daughter, didn't know this, and only found out once Rastakhan died. That now she doesn't belong, but now she owes Bronsamdi because of this deal that they made. And obviously she's not very happy about that. You know, it wasn't even her decision. She had no idea of it. And Bronsamdi is realizing that, hey, okay, I realize you're not happy with this deal. I'll give you a new one. We will cut our deal if you give me Sylvanus's head. So that's basically what happened.
And this was all because Razan, who's the dinosaur you saw in Zuldazar, died. And he was the Loa of Kings, and Rastakhan needed the assistance of another Loa to fight back against Zul. So he reached out to Bronsamdi for assistance. So he would get his kingdom back if he then basically pledged his entire family to serve Bronsamdi. And so Talanji's now cleaning up her father's mess.
So what if Bronsamdi kills Talanji and Sylvanus? We could
That's
just
a
kill
good
off.
point.
We could just kill off
Yeah.
all the characters. I'll fight them all, dude. You can make them all raid bosses. All the same to me, man.
Yeah,
There
I don't
was
know.
an interesting line that Bronsamdi said when he realized that Vol'jin's spirit had escaped, that Vol'jin kind of came back into this weird like limbo position where he was like, oh no, he's like, the boss will not be happy with this. And everyone is speculating who is Bronsamdi's boss. Like, we know it's not the Lich King. We know they're sort of rivals. It's funny. It's like, oh, like all these people in the underworld are fighting for my souls. So there is some speculation that does Bronsamdi serve someone darker, like, you know, Yogg is known as the god of death. Like, is there some really evil, shadowy boss? And Bronsamdi wants. Why does Bronsamdi want Sylvanus? Is it to serve a higher power? In another quest line in 8.1, Bronsamdi saying he doesn't like Sylvanus because she disrupts the balance between life and death, you know, existing in this position of undeath. So does he want her out of the picture because she is a threat to, basically his livelihood, his business of, taking care of the dead. She makes potential souls not dead. Like that's why he wanted to go after Cahoon. Cahoon was competing with his, market, the souls that were dead. So maybe he wants Sylvanas out of the way so she's not competing with those same souls.
This is great. Tettles learning so much.
Yep. I had no idea why we killed Cahoon, honestly. I still don't know why
we
killed Argus.
That was not explained very well.
Cahoon I don't know why we killed Argus or killed Jaden. The only one I do know Gul'dan. I got told that one. But okay. It's the only one I know.
Were you told it, or was it like...
Oh, it was told. I was
like Drew in chat being like, Jane is married to Arthas. You missed the quest, Tettles.
It's like Gul'dan is trying to resummon Sargeras, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know anything about this. Guilty always gets mad at me for not paying attention.
Oh.
Well, you should pay more attention to the lore.
I just don't watch I don't watch the cutscenes. Any of them.
They're really popular on Wowhead. You should watch them.
Dude, there's nothing wrong with liking them. I don't think that's bad. I think I just not my cup of.
Yeah, no, it happens.
It's fine. Yeah.
People are interested in different things, and that's okay. That is okay. And I think sometimes it can be fun to have like, because I'm not as knowledgeable as Perk, for example. That's why when we normally do the lore things, I'm the one, sitting here eating my popcorn, listening to Perk talking about it.
You have all the pretty images on the screen, so I can like illustrate my point
I guess
better.
I guess I can do something more than eating popcorn. I can show pictures and But I think the more you know usually means that it becomes more interesting. So the less you know, the less interesting it is. I think it's one of those things, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, moving on to the next allied race called Tettles. We also have an update for them. The heritage armor seems to have gone through an update. I'll get some pictures as Perk, if you want, you can talk about it.
Yeah. So this got a lot of controversy and strong opinions last week. Previously, the armor was long and flowing, very bright gold and blue with an anchor on the back. And there were some clipping issues. I don't know why, but people are speculating it's clipping issues. And it has been changed to be more muted, where the coat is now shorter and the back is just split. It doesn't have the anchor on the back. And the timing of this was pretty awkward because Blizzard released all their promotional materials for the allied race using the old style, but the new style had hit the PTR. So everyone is confused what this armor is meant to look like. And the armor and all the promotional materials is also what we've seen on the official website. So people are like, oh, I thought I was getting, gold trim, but instead it's like very faint yellow. Yeah, everyone has really strong opinions on this. Which style looks better? What style do you guys like more?
Have you seen these Tettles?
I'm looking at them for the first time right now. Yes, I have seen them.
I saw them for the first time today as well, so that's okay.
I have seen them. I can't tell the difference between the yellow and the gold, if I'm going to be real with you.
So if you look at the ones that has an anchor at the back towards the bottom, that's the old model, and then you have the new model, which is a lot more subtle.
And doesn't have an anchor.
It doesn't have an anchor.
Huh. Okay. So I still can't tell the difference, if I'm going to be real.
Maybe you're looking at female and male. Maybe you need to scroll down more.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, no, those do look different.
Yeah.
Kib, I do not transmog. I play balanced druid. I just use the chicken form.
Oh, that's a good point. You don't even need transmog.
I don't transmog.
It's
a good look.
Yeah, I personally feel like the very, very golden anchor at the bottom, which we can see right now on the screen, feels too much. So I actually like the fact that the anchor is removed. But having said that, the new model... Wait, let me quickly open it again. Here, the new one here, feels a little bit boring. Like, it's... Something about it just feels a little bit more gray, I guess. Feels less flashy. It doesn't have to have a very flashy super gold anchor, but it could still have, golden rims or something. Those edges of the coat, I think, could have stayed more goldenish. But I do like that the anchor is gone. I think the anchor was a little bit too much. How do you feel
I
about
think
them,
that-
Perk?
So a lot of the heritage sets are very over the top. Like Void Elves have sparkly purple wings. Dark Iron Dwarves sort of are on fire. And you have to keep in mind that if something looks a little overkill up close, the armor is to show off to everyone around you. So you need those details to stand out if you're across the road in Borealis or across the raid. So I think that maybe the anchor and the bright was too overkill, but you need something to make the outfit pop and be eye-catching from farther away. So maybe the coat being longer with gold trim, maybe that would just be enough, but I think it's a little too muted right now.
Yeah,
Although I do want to
agree.
point out that people were pretty excited to see that the hat actually shows hair, because hats in WoW are plagued by you put the hat on and then you lose your hair.
Yeah, that's a great
So
little
is it
detail.
safe to say that the robe is too heavy?
Too heavy?
Can you explain that?
There's an anchor on it.
Oh, they had to remove it. We don't want players going through the earth being too heavy.
I don't know, man.
Tettles showing off that casting desk humor.
Yes.
But yeah,
But maybe,
yeah.
I do think it was really bad timing that they put the old look in all the promotional materials and then changed it, because everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, open ticket! This isn't the armor set I thought I was getting."
No, I don't know why they made the gold soul faded afterwards. They could have kept it still golden, just remove the anchor, because I do think the anchor was too much.
Yeah, and the gold they used on all the promotional materials, like if you look at the Allied Race page, you don't see the anchor on the Allied Race BFA site, but you see that gold, and it looks really nice against the blue and all the gold like hints on the page and the fonts. So I think removing that is, I would just say bring the gold back and maybe not the anchor. That could be something.
And like you said, because if you look back at them, it seems that the coat is also a little bit shorter than the old one.
Yeah.
Which makes it a little bit less special, I guess, because we don't have long coats in general in the game. So the long coat is one of the special and unique things about the Kultiran Heritage armor. Let me scroll through the old one to quickly show how it is a little bit longer.
I remember there's a leather dungeon set that it's not a short jacket, but it's meant to look like a jacket. So people are like, oh, like this is a little too similar to the leather dungeon set. I can, get on my fresh 110.
Yeah, that's the heritage armor for cool tiers, and it's the latest version so far. I mean, obviously things can still change. You never know, but it seems like this is the final form.
Yep.
Last week, we also talked about some loot that became official or available for us to look through from Crucible of Storms. And the interesting thing about these items was that they all had, or not all of them maybe, but a lot of the items had special effects on them, effects that we would normally only see on trinkets, if anywhere. And we have some of them to show you guys as a visual, on top of it being a special effect.
Yeah, we were really excited to see these because we saw the effects, and I think we talked about them last week on the show a little bit, how we thought they were interesting, but then when we tested them on the PTR, they all look super cool and old godlike with purple tendrils. So Blizzard is putting some effort into these, which I think is important, especially after all the critiques about Azerite armor and things being boring.
I'm gonna show you guys one of the clips we have, which is the effect on one of the leg pieces. This one, if I remember correctly, has an effect which gives you haste, and it deals damage to you if you go outside of that circle. So as you can see, it's a very clear circle, very clear visual,
Yep.
which is really cool to have on a random piece of gear from the raid. It's like these items are already more special than Azeroth pieces.
Yeah, and it also plays up the fantasy of the raid because you get a benefit, but there's also great risk playing with the magic of the void. If you even though you don't care about the lore, if you move out of the bubble, you take damage.
Yeah, you take shadow
So,
damage if you move out of it.
Yeah.
I have another piece to show you guys. This one is a speed effect from. I actually don't remember what piece it was.
I've got it up. It's the one we can't pronounce. It's from the Restless Cabal, and it's from ZAXASJ's Deep Striders.
There you go.
Hold on. Can you spell it again? I'll try to pronounce.
Okay.
ZAXASJ.
Zax Ash.
There you go. That's the official pronunciation. Thank you so much for
Gotcha.
enlightening us. All right, let me show you guys how it looks like. So you can see that this NPC is walking around with a very, very blue effect around the feet. So it's very clear.
Yeah, so they're all like very water related but sinister. So it's either
Stormy.
yeah, like showing the culture of the Tide Sages, how you're trying to use storms. So maybe in this one it's showing, hey, it's positive, but it's pulling upon this magical Tide Sage magic because educating Tettles, Crucible of Storms is underneath Shrine of the Storms, which is related to Queen Ashara, who was trying to mess with the Kultiran fleet and take them for her own purposes, and the Tide Sages were sort of being listed into this dark magic. So more bad things are happening that are related to old gods. So
Okay, so wait, what's the deal with the Eye of Ashara then? I don't understand.
Eye of Ashara was one of her aspects, I believe. So you mean that was back in Legion, the Legion dungeon.
Yeah, that was the dungeon.
Yeah. So that was with one of her artifacts. But now Ashara can go anywhere. So Ashara is trying in BFA to meddle with the Alliance by taking the Kultiris fleet, meddling with the Horde by you probably missed it. There's a piece of paper where it's revealed that Zul is working with Ashara to overthrow the Zendalari Empire. So she's trying to weaken both factions individually in BFA.
Was that the cinematic after Zul?
No.
Okay.
If you kill Naga on the coast, one can drop an item, and the item then gives you a book that has their correspondence.
Well, thank you for telling me where the instance is. That's actually going to be pretty useful.
Yep.
I can make it just Shrine of the Storm.
Yep, it's underneath Shrine of the Storm.
Gosh.
And it follows, it sort of furthers that story that, hey, the Tide Sages kind of have all these tentacles. Why are they like the old gods? And, oh, look, the Tide Sages are doing bad things. And, oh no, now there are very bad things. There are eyeballs and all sorts of horrible things.
I just saw a comment in chat. Perk is going to eventually just Skype call Nalba and be like, help us, please.
Have like a group call.
Oh no.
No,
Gang up on
Tettles is
Tettles.
doing fine. He's doing fine. He's
Yeah.
even asking questions. Like that's a big plus.
He's willing to learn.
But yeah, about these loot items, what do you guys think of them? Is it something that we want to see more of in the future? Do you have any favorite? Have you looked through them, Tettles?
There was
these-
these pants that give you haste. Hold on.
Mhm.
There's a couple that were pretty cool. There was the boots that give you a bunch of speed, the cloth ones, and there were these pants that give you haste.
Those
and
are the
then
two
they
with the
give you
best
a
visuals.
Yeah. The two with the best visuals.
Mhm.
The plate pants I think give you the absorb, right? Those are OP. And then the boots with the haste are also the speed or whatever are also pretty good.
Mhm.
So those are both really cool.
Mhm.
I like the visuals. They look cool.
Mhm.
I like the Nazoth trinket where if you keep it on too long, it kills you.
Wait, really? It does?
Yeah, the Lurker's Insidious gift is embrace Nazoth's gift, increasing your mastery. Every 1 second gains suffering, inflicting shadow damage per application. So you keep it on too long, every 1 second, you will die.
Oh, wait, how long does it take for it to be considerable damage? Oh, you mean if you can't heal?
Oh no, yeah. I think eventually it's going to kill you. Or
Mm.
if you keep it on for minutes straight, you're going, you
Yeah,
can't. If
keep
it's
taking
in your
damage.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine going
I think we
AFK
did
with
it.
that.
Yeah, I think we did a Twitch clip of Angelin dying wearing it.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah.
That seems like a bait. It seems like something that you just don't ever wear.
Well,
Yeah, it
what
also
about
feels
wearing
like
that?
Surrender of Madness. Like it's trying to replicate that effect.
But if
that
you heal, do you
die
out heal
horribly.
it? Like, is it fine damage?
I don't think I mean, after a certain point, I think there's a gray area where you could out heal it, but then I'm pulling up the stats. If you do it too long, then you
Just does too much
die
damage.
horribly. Yeah.
Okay.
You can toggle the trinket off though.
Okay.
So yeah.
Because I was thinking if you combine that with the boots that give you speed, because it gives you more speed the lower HP you are, right?
Oh yeah, so you have
So
both
you
of them
want to
together,
take
and then
damage.
right. So you want to take damage at a certain point, then you run around, you put the trinket on, take ticks, run around with the boots, and then you turn the trinket off.
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah,
Yeah,
Tettles
there's all
just went
sorts of
feral.
fun.
Yeah, dude. My ferals.
Feral
around.
spec now.
Yeah, there's all
Get the
sorts of
fish
fun
in the book.
interactions. Like there's these male hands where if you are above a certain amount of health, you deal damage to your target, but also yourself. So if you don't get healed, then you will, lose that extra damage you're dealing to other people. There's all sorts of weird risk reward type things where you get a benefit, but then also things don't go so well for you. And the loot from the second boss, Unat, who was meant to be tested today, that's going to be tested tomorrow, has more of the drastic effects. I feel like the Restless Cabal is more like it's mostly positive things. It's like, oh, while above health, you can deal damage, but if you don't have as much health, this item heals you. It's interesting, but it's not horrible things. While with Unat, it's like, oh, if you keep this on too long, you just die. So maybe it's showing like stuff's getting more, serious and worse. Like,
yeah.
if you look at the description, and it's like when she struck her bargain with N'Zoth 10,000 years ago, Queen Ashara offered one of her most devoted followers into the old god's service. Now Unat and the crawling masses he commands herald the coming of their master as foretold by the stars. So that sounds pretty bad. Like that sounds pretty close to old gods, and the items are reflecting stuff not being really good.
I like how everything is starting to feel creepy. Like, I don't know if it's just me,
Yeah.
but I still feel really creepy accepting the buff from Bwan Samdi once you deplete a key. Like, it just feels like a lingering bad effect. Like, I shouldn't be accepting this.
Yeah, it's like he's gonna come back and be like, I want your firstborn child because I helped you get through this, mythic plus keystone.
Exactly.
Do you think that we're going to see more loot like this moving forward, or is this like a one-time thing because of the raid being so short? I think that there's still some potential because we saw a few of these items in Dazar'alor, so maybe that was a testing ground for them going all out, in Crucible, and they can keep this up in the future. Hopefully. I think the loot's more interesting than
I think it gives
stat sticks.
flavor. So I think it's always a good thing to add things like that. I mean, hopefully it's especially when they add utility. Because that means that it doesn't have to be affected by the stats on the piece, so people can use it for fun reasons. Like that would be really cool. Like keeping things like the speed, for example, because the haste one. I mean, I'm not sure how. I haven't looked into the stats, but maybe the legs that give haste has like to compensate the haste buff. Maybe it gives less stats overall. I actually don't know.
I need to check. I know they've been tweaking the stats in the last build. Also, speaking of tweaking builds, there's a PTR built earlier today that I don't think had major changes to these items, but they did tweak them a little bit. So maybe some of the numbers are saying are slightly off. But check out Wow's page if you want that. Actually, let me pull that up right now. So we've got Malformed Herald's leg wraps, and I'm going to pull up Dazar'alor, Loot, and Azurite.
Someone in the chat says that the items that have DPS increase only have one secondary stat.
That was true, but I think they changed them to add more stats because the item we're talking about with haste does have
two stats.
Does have more than one stack.
Okay.
So I'm pulling up Leggings of Dire Research from Grong. Uh, let's see. So sorry, I'm white side by side. Same amount of intellect, 329. Same amount of stamina, 556. The research has 101 critical strike and 144 versatility, while Malform just has 147 critical strike. But then it has the use effect.
Okay, so it does drop a stat then.
Yeah, so instead of the stat, you have a use
proc
effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like with those, people are still just gonna look into what sims higher, right? And it might not be that interesting, but when you have item effects like it increases your speed, or it decreases your Hearthstone cooldown, or like more like other kind of things, that can be more interesting.
I wonder how it will affect war mode as well, where, speed boots could be really good for attacking someone and then running away, or if you're in a group, maybe the trinket where it heals everyone near you is really good if you're just like running around doing war mode stuff. Or if you're gonna die anyway, maybe you don't care if something will kill you if you just want to run back and fight for the assault again, and other people with your team will be alive and you're just running back from a nearby graveyard.
Half your mounting speed, like 2 mount.
Right, that would be a fun one.
Yeah.
Hold on, I have travel form. Wait a second.
Yeah, but not all of us have that luxury, okay?
Hold on, wait a second. I'm gonna go twice as fast.
We only have that luxury during Hallow's End. That's it. If we get the broom.
Yeah.
That's the only time we can experience that. The rest of the time, we're just jealous looking at druids.
Do you think that it's an issue though, especially with like Titan Forging being in the game, because like tier after tier they have to like one up what they've done in order to make the loot more enticing. We saw it be like a pretty big issue with like tier sets in last expansion, and that's probably part of the reason that they removed it. I don't know what the other reasons would be. They were getting kind of stale, maybe. I have no idea, but like they have to like one up themselves tier after tier, and they are really struggling to do that. Do you think that it's going to be an issue for like the last raid of the expansion, or do you think it's going to be okay?
Issue as in the numbers are going to be ridiculous?
Issue in terms of like it's going to be difficult to make gear that's rewarding. Because like if I have to go and farm old raids for Titan Forging, I think I'm gonna scream.
But do you feel like it's worth it to go into old raids? Because
I mean,
like the item
depends
level,
on how good it is.
like the item level gap is so big.
We saw that in Legion with the world boss, how everyone had to try for the Titan Forged amazing Arcano crystal.
Yes, but I think except for that, it hasn't really happened though, has it?
I was farming 2 Masargeras for tier bonuses too, for tier pieces.
Oh yeah. Tier pieces. Yeah, you're right.
I mean,
you're
stuff
right
like that
those.
like was pretty common.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that you would hate if all of a sudden a proc is scaling up really well and like eye level 500 Titan
but that's what they
Crucible
removed.
Storms version.
Right? I mean, because the reason for the old tier pieces was because the tier set bonuses were so strong, right? So that's why people wanted to go for them. Even if they were 30 item level lower, it might have been worth it. And now with the tier set bonuses gone, that won't happen. And they haven't introduced another Arcana crystal. I mean, I don't know. I haven't heard anyone going into old gear at the moment for gear. I feel like the item level jump has been so harsh that no one goes back.
Well, Uldir doesn't have like off pieces with secondary effects that are actually used, and even BOD does not have like secondary effects on the pieces that are like overwhelmingly useful, like you guys were talking about.
Both raids have been very boring with gear.
Yeah, so this could be a raid that actually has interesting stuff people might want to farm in the future that we haven't seen for quite some time.
Like trinkets too. I don't get excited to get a raid trinket, and it feels really strange. Like I'm more excited to get a trinket from my mythic box, on reset day, than going into the raids, because most of the time it's like, yeah, okay, this raid boss, okay, this trinket is bad, this trinket is bad, this trinket is bad. Unless it like Titan forges something crazy, that same item level is probably better as one of the mythic trinkets.
Well, they changed like the trinkets in general. They changed it to where like 70% of their damage is just from like the main stat, and then like 30% is from the proc. Whereas in expansions past, it's been like 30% from the main stat, 70% from the proc. So it's definitely a big shift in terms of what you're looking for in terms of trinkets. And they're trying to make trinkets easier to assess, but it's I don't like it because I liked trinkets being kind of cool, but at the same time, I do understand why it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, there's also things like some of the world quest trinkets obviously don't start off at a super high item level, but if they Titan Forge, they're really good, and they show up really high on, Blood Mallet charts.
Yeah.
And even though they're not the most practical trinkets, they still get a lot of traffic going to Wowhead, where, if you're like, oh, this is the best trinket, I want this world quest trinket. It's like, well, maybe, but
About that, probably
yeah.
never gonna get it. I'm sorry.
1% chance you're gonna get that one versus the one from Dazar Lord you farm every week.
Yeah, I don't know. I prefer farming the latest raid tier for a great trinket than to hope for Titan Forges from world quests.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel right. And I think
Well-
that's the whole Titan Forge topic in general. Like, can we cap it, please, to 10 item level or something?
Well, yeah, the issue is that they have to build up off like the structures that they've created in earlier tiers to make sure that the gear is not worthwhile to go back and farm, but at the same time it's difficult to make the stuff in current content interesting if you're trying to constantly worry about making it not too good later on, like Arcano Crystal or tier sets or secondary effects on Crucible of Storm's gear or whatever else, right?
I'm gonna apologize for my cat being very undignified during this.
Oh, hello.
It's okay. We all
Smushing my
like
mic.
Brightpaw. It's okay.
Um,
But yeah, that's probably why we haven't really seen a trinket with pure stats like that.
yeah, they just need to make sure that something doesn't scale up to be overpowered with the proc. But yeah, like you said, the trinkets from Crucible are not stat sticks. But yeah, let's just hope that something isn't super OP or is gonna one-shot players if you get the Titan Forge version, because I can see people complaining about that in war mode too. Like, like this procced and it, instead of killing the person, it killed me, and even though it's a risky trinket, this sucks if it's super Titan Forged. Rainbow, come on.
Do you think
people complain about war mode PvP a lot? I feel like that's like a...
Well, I feel like people were upset about the lag in doing anything outdoor in the world, and then people were saying that some flight paths were getting super camped if they were the outnumbered faction.
Dude, every single time I went to go do a Tortolan quest, I always got camped and killed, and I had to turn off war mode because of it.
See, yeah, people care that
It's
if
so
something
annoying.
annoys.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's not that I like actually care. It's that I just want my 10% AP because I, for some reason, care a lot about this 10% AP for no reason. So I get animated. So I keep my war mode on as just like a point that I want it, and then I get camped, and then I get upset. So it's a vicious cycle with me, honestly.
Well, now imagine someone with like a trinket that is proccing it and like killing people at your flight point with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you just don't want to have. I guess I'm saying war mode is just one example, but you don't want some weird exploitable interaction with a trinket scaling up and then it becomes overpowered after a certain item level and is doing unintended behavior.
Yeah, I think
as
we
for our
can
next
move on.
Yep. Brightpaw is back because we're talking about a furry alpaca, and he likes furry things, don't you, Brightpaw?
He does. He's making sure that you don't show any interest in this because, Brightpaw is everything for you, right, Perk?
Yes, he is he is cuter than the alpaca mount, but the alpaca mount is pretty cute, and it's encrypted, and it's in WoW, and my cat is not encrypted in WoW.
So
there is a bit of a mystery to this.
Here, yes, there is a mystery indeed. Do you want to talk about it?
So there are encrypted sounds for a new creature model, which is also encrypted, and normally that means that if something's encrypted, it's going to be related to either a shop promotion or BlizzCon or something important to the lore. Usually cinematics are encrypted. So, and the sounds are all having names related to an alpaca, so we're extrapolating that if the sounds tied to the mystery mount are called alpaca, that the mount is also related to the alpaca. Which then raises the question, if there is an alpaca and it has to be secret, what could it be from? So obviously, lol, it could be a shop mount because everything is a shop mount. But the more interesting thing is this like a tease for the Vopera allied race?
Oh. Wait, why Vopera?
Because the whole horde in Vol'dun, the Vopera have the alpaca, and the whole thing with Dolly and Dot is Mira the Vopera writing the two best, her two best alpacas. So maybe they could be official.
Do you think their emote's gonna be like the llama spitting or the alpaca spitting?
Oh my god.
Could be.
The mount special.
Yeah, exactly.
Spitting.
Dude, it
That's
like
actually
hawks
genius.
a big loogie just like across the map.
That would be pretty great. But yeah.
Yeah, this is
Or
a
it could
naked model. Obviously, if it becomes a mount, it could, maybe have some armor added or maybe some other kind of details. We're not sure yet. Nothing is confirmed. This is mostly speculation.
Yep, it's just fun to speculate. People are really excited about. People were really hyped. They're like, oh, I hope it's true. So, maybe even if this was an oopsie or a Blizzard trying to confuse us, an alpaca mount would be nice to make its way to Battle for Azeroth in some form. Right, Pod, don't eat the microphone.
I just saw someone in chat say, I got spit macro. I don't need a spitting mount. What if you combine the two? What if you combine the two?
This. I like that.
Imagine in arena you just killed someone and then you just mount up and then you use your spit macro.
It's good. I like this idea. You guys are toxic. I love it.
Okay, now we know what makes Tettles excited. Just be toxic.
You talk about mounting up and spitting on people. Like, I don't know. That's great. I like that.
Meanwhile, Bright Paw's like, I don't like this talk. I'm chewing your microphone cord.
Oh no. Who are you talking to, Mom? These people are mean.
Come on, Bright Paw. Now he's rubbing up against the microphone. He's like, I have fur too, and you can hear my fur against the microphone.
Aww.
Reminding us that he is fur. Yes, you're very furry and in trouble. Come on, Bright Paw. In, again, more gear technical news, we have been trying to preview the profession quests that are released every few days. Stevan is leveling up characters and maxing out professions to unlock all of them. It's crazy, pretty crazy. And the most recent one we previewed, Bright Paw, stop, is the jewel crafting quest, which the special item at the end is something that lets you take gems, unsocket them without destroying them. And then you can also mine special geodes every day. We also didn't get around to previewing the alchemy quest line, but I think the video might be up. We just don't have the article, but apparently that does a bunch of cool stuff, like you can interact with special cauldrons, and one lets you is a healing potion, one turns you into a disguise. We've previewed leatherworking that gives you a personal haste buff and then some outdoor buffs. I think we've previewed enchanting that lets you get more materials and control a golem. So we're just curious if you've been paying attention to this, Tettles, and if you have any thoughts on these. I know the jewel crafting one in particular, people were more interested in because it wasn't just a kind of flavor fluffy thing. It was actual, this is good for raiding. Like, now I don't need to, I can just, save gems. This is, nice and convenient. So do any of these profession items stand out to you as important things to have for raiding, or are they just like whatever profession things?
Yeah, so the leatherworking, the outdoor buff thing seemed kind of cool. That's not super useful for anything beyond like world questing. Okay, what exactly do those engineering Uber spinner things do? What exactly are they? Because engineering is like ridiculous.
So let me pull this up. The 1 second. That was actually. It
says that it like summons robots, but I don't know what the robots actually do.
I think they can do one of three things. I'm pulling this up quickly because that one was pretty incomplete on the PTR for a while.
Okay, so depending on how good that is, then it could be good. We saw engineering actually being insane for most of progression so far, because you've had that engineering belt tinker that gives you the shield.
Oh, yeah.
That thing is really. Let's call an Uber. I like that.
I think it does three different things. So one of them is a target dummy. One of them it does three sorts of things. I'm somehow there's three types of constructs that can appear. I'm having difficulty actually finding the post where I covered all of this. Let's see, tools of the trade 815. Will this pull it up? The actual items tooltip is in kind of typical Blizzard fashion, not very good.
Uh-huh.
And I'm trying to find this, but it's very difficult because when I say tools of the trade, wow, it's like, did you mean tricks of the trade? We have a lot of things on tricks of the trade. Okay, maybe this old thing with novel has it? No. Anyway, let me where is this? Let's see. Uber construct. It's also because they have funny names, it's difficult to show up. Come on. I'm talking to the search page, hoping it can bring things up for me. Don't mind me. I'm just
But
trying
yeah,
to scroll
no,
through.
the
Yeah.
engineering is always going to be pretty good for PvEers in terms of like you're still if you're able to still get Azerite helmets. However, they change the Azerite system, that's going to be pretty good. The NG belt's still going to be pretty good, depending on how good those Uber spanners are. Depending on what they do, they could be useful.
I think I find it. So one summons an improved training dummy. One is something called short fused bomb bots. So I guess it's someone's little things to attack on your behalf. And then
Those do damage? Do they do damage in raid? Does that work in raid?
I would think so.
Okay, then that's good. Yeah.
And that's a DPS
And then
increase.
Yeah,
and
that's a
then
damage
there's
increase.
Yeah.
Worth.
and then something is the Uber Sentry MKX 8.0, which I assume does utility stuff because it summons an NPC. So maybe that's like a Jeeves type.
So
okay.
It summons a puppy.
So the training dummy is good because you're able to probably drop it like before you start a Mythic Plus dungeon in order to be able to get resources on some of your party members. So that's useful. And then obviously if the bomb one actually does damage, then that's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I'm pulling this up. Engineering is something that's more expensive to level, so we haven't gotten to doing this quest yet. But
Engineering has always been so expensive.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure based on the icons that it's gonna throw bombs on your behalf.
Okay.
Like I'm just seeing a bunch of spells with the same name being like, does fire damage.
Yeah.
And yeah, the NPC is that, a bomb bot. So I assume having it do damage seems to be a pretty good guess. But yeah, that does a few different things. And like I said, the alchemy one should be up. It's a trinket that has some silly effects, but also does some stuff with cauldrons, I think. One thing that's interesting about the leatherworking one is that it just increases your haste, not anyone else's. So it doesn't really stand in for, drums or like time warp. It just is a personal haste buff. So it's not as like overpowered as I thought it was.
You said it was just open world too. I didn't know from reading it if it was only open world or not because, like you said, the Blizzard and the tooltips in classic Blizzard fashion are not very descriptive in terms of what they actually.
Yeah, the speed, might, and resilience. You go to the drum in any zone and you get a buff for 30 minutes. But I believe you can use the temporary haste one anywhere, but it only works on you. It's not like you and your party.
Okay.
So not as useful.
Yeah.
The jewel crafting thing will save you some money in a profession that's already dying and not worth anything.
Which is the case for a lot of professions, which is kind of sad.
Dude, I don't understand why jewel crafting is worth, like, they add mass prospecting and now jewel crafting is literally worth like no gold. It's literally worth like 50 gold like per gem or something.
Is it because the gems became less overpowered, or with, making it be not a guaranteed thing on some items, they were less in demand? Like, why do you think jewel crafting is sort of gone by the wayside?
I think it's the scrapper, and I think it's the availability of gems.
Yeah.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah,
They're
because
worth,
everyone's
like,
getting
they're
gems.
just worth nothing. Yeah, no, they're just worth nothing right now. Like, all of the gems are just not worth anything. Socketed items are actually insanely powerful.
They are.
Too.
They are very powerful indeed.
So I guess if you make this, you can save money by holding on to gems, but to make the item, you need a lot of gold, and you need to level up jewel crafting, and the item requires a lot of mats. So if you can make this item, you're probably not someone that's hurting for gold. But yeah, check out Wowhead in future weeks. I think we still have 4 of these quest lines to preview in the news, and we try to highlight the item. And if you do care about the lore, there's some interesting tidbits as well. They're not as in depth as Legion, but you learn interesting things like some. The Dark Moon Fair creator, he shows up in the alchemy quest line, so you're like, oh, that's what he does when he's not doing the fair. Or the enchanting one is talking about the Drust, which people might care about because they are tied to the druid, why Kultirans are druids. So there's a little bit of flavor here and there we try to write down in the articles as well. Another allied race topic. I know we're getting late. We don't need to play like half an hour of music, but there was new Crucible of Storms and allied race music, and in today's PTR build, Arathi Basin and Warsung Gulch. And people really love the Kultiris music, and the Crucible of Storms stuff is very cool and menacing. I hope it goes along with a cinematic or cutscene because it's really epic.
Wait,
so
Warsung Gulch and Arathi Basin also got new music?
Yeah, they got new music today. So that's tied to their revamp. I don't know, like, I don't think the battlegrounds are actually testable on the PTR, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, because they're getting a revamp, they're getting a fresh coat of paint, and that even means, loading screens and some other stuff like that.
Well, do you want to play one of these two music pieces? Crucible Storms or Allied Race music?
I think, like, Allied Race, it's more soothing. It's kind of the evening for people. Crucible of Storms is like...
energy.
Yeah. It's like sad energy. It's like demotivational energy. But yeah, let's play a little bit of the Allied Race.
All right.
One of the Kultiran tracks.
Let's go for it. It's a very feels-good music. Maybe we should replace our in music at the beginning of the show.
I was thinking of doing that. Every YouTuber would replace the music with that. Yeah, I think let's do it for at least this patch. Yeah.
Sure how far into the song we are here, but I think we can stop around
we
there.
can just fade it out. Yeah, people get the idea.
But yeah, I really like it. I think it's very cozy music.
Yeah.
That's why I compared it to like the in music.
Yeah, I think we can replace the in music with that. Change it up a bit. And if you didn't know, every allied race except for High Mountain and Nightborn has their special allied race music. You don't really hear it for that long in game. I think it's just on the loading screen or creating the race. But it's cool that they have this pretty detailed soundtrack going along with them.
And there's more than one song as well, right?
Yeah, there's Kultiris and Zandalari have several tracks actually, so that's pretty neat. And yeah, I think I might do a post highlighting the musical influences for them, because a lot of people are like, "Whoa, I didn't realize Void Elves had them." So it might be good just to go back and be like, "Hey, like." Cool stuff to listen to.
Yeah, no, indeed. Before we go on to the next topic, I wanted to also quickly remind you guys of the giveaway. Sass is taking care of the giveaway in the chat. You type Hoot in the chat if you want to enter it. What you can win is a Moonkin Hatchling, which is a very cute boomy pet because of this guy here next to us, Tettles being here. We are giving it away for him, and you will get an Alliance version and a Horde version of it. And also keep in mind that this one is not sold on the store anymore, so it is officially unobtainable. For now, at least.
I think on the Wowhead guide, it was on the template that I initially used, it was asking about pets, and I'm pretty sure it was talking about hunter pets, but I was like, what should I put about pets? I was like, oh, get the Moonkin hatchling if you're an MVP, and name it Lil Tettles if you're a fan. And I had people tweeting it out to me that they named it that. And I was like, this is a great. I was like, this is fantastic.
Yeah, that's adorable.
This is really funny.
Yeah, I remember that people on Twitter were actually doing that. We're like, oh god, people actually listen to us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Funny.
So speaking of pets, our next topic is a little bit of a lore follow-up related to a pet that we highlighted, I think, 2 weeks ago. And if you remember, we were previewing Before the Storm, and there was a quest line related to the side plot of the goblin and gnome characters, and we previewed the Alliance version, and this week we have the Horde version. And this the same result. You get a cute little flapping pet, Feathers, a mechanical parrot, who has significance if you've read Before the Storm. He was a anniversary present for the couple. But what is significant is that the story changes from Alliance to Horde. So on the Alliance side, you have Kelsey, the best friend of Saffronetta, trying to figure out where she is, hoping she is okay. But on the Horde side, you have Gallywix, who's like, I don't like Grizzik the Goblin. Can you go off and kill him for me if he's alive? And the only way that you don't kill him is that Gazlo intercepts you and promises to reward you with more money if you save his life. So the outcome is the same. The goblin and gnome decide they're both alive instead of being killed, as some people thought, and they sort of go off into the sunset on their little mechano hog, and they don't they're kept a secret from the larger public, but it's very different how the Alliance is very feel good and the Horde is like, you should, exactly.
Yeah. Another little point about the pet as well. I'm going to quickly remind you guys of how the mount looked from the BlizzCon. Here, give me a second. There we go. From one of the BlizzCon slides, there is a mount model that looks very similar to the pet model, which we still don't know where it's from, but I just wanted to remind you guys how it looks because it looks really cool, and it might open up the possibility of this mount coming into the game soon as well.
What if it's from doing 300 island expedition? Better get 500. Hold on.
The mounts are already extremely rare.
Yeah.
Like, it actually takes hundreds of runs to even get most of the mounts already. They're very rare. So 300 is... A lot of people will be like, wait, only 300? Like, that's nothing. People are doing thousands.
Yeah, like Annie.
Actually, I'm slacking, and I've done, like... I don't know how many I've done, but I have, like, maybe 600 or 700 doubloons across my characters. I'm not sure how many runs that is. But people have done a lot more. I'm actually behind on Island Expeditions. It's something I need to catch up with.
I was going to say that it could be interesting if this was from Mechagon. Like, maybe... You know how Karazhan had the Nightbane mount that dropped as a special thing if you do it as a speed clear? It would be interesting if this was from a similar mechanic in that dungeon. Or a lot of people are speculating that the Goblin and Gnome plot right now can tie into something with Mecha Gnomes, obviously coming in 8.2, or if Blizzard gets ambitious and wants another race, this could be tied to, even a new Tinker class. So maybe this mount will be rewarded from some sort of story combination, do everything in the Mechagon area, do the 8 different quest lines, and you get this mount at the end, and you get feathers at the start of the quest, you do the little teaser quest, you get the pet, and then if you do all the quests, you get the mount. So it would be interesting to see where that's from.
Yeah, definitely.
Blizzard did use it as a slide at BlizzCon, being like, oh, this is Flying's coming in 8.2. Look at this beautiful mount.
Yep.
So they definitely wanted to have a role of prominence if they're showing it off.
So Zendlar Troll was not the only slide that still is not in the game.
Exactly. Yeah. Multiple slides.
Rude.
And
But sorry, I interrupted you. But what were you going to say, Tettles?
I said I was going to say I would actually like if it was Karazhan style, where you actually have to do some certain event, like kind of a special event in a dungeon. Because I don't think that Karazhan mount was not... Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool.
There was a lot of hype with the secrecy. No one knew how you got it. I think the first group that got it wouldn't share with people, but then the second group shared. So that was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
So building upon the lore, for our next topic, we have some cutscenes, not cinematics. The cutscenes are like the more in-game variant. And we data mined one for Magni and then one for Hati's reunion. And the Magni one is just a lot of talking. I think we covered the gist of it a few weeks ago, and it seems kind of bad. Basically, Mother is like, "Hey, Magni, your presence means that Azeroth is, you know,
In danger.
threatened." Yeah, and then he's like, "I know, I need your help." And she's like, "I have a great idea. I'm from Uldir, which is super corrupted, so why don't you bring me to the Chamber of Heart and nothing will go wrong?" And then all these little void things come out and you have to fight them. So basically, we just have the more epic conversation between them. Like I said, it's interesting for lore, but not super exciting to watch. But I did think it would be cool if we could watch the Hati cutscene, because it's just, oh, at the end, you want to just sort of cuddle your pet when you see Hati reuniting.
Let me get that
Yeah.
up. I've got it right here. And there it was.
Yeah. It's super sad. Well, not sad, but it's like, oh, he's back. Feelings.
I'm actually really happy that Hunters did get Hati back, because it was such a big
Yeah.
discussion before. It's like we all
Yeah.
lost our artifact weapons, but they lost Hati, you know? It's like the extra step.
It's really sad because when we got Hati with the artifact, it was after Hati had already undergone a sacrifice, and we saved Hati, and it feels really kind of callous that we are letting this puppy get blown up again after, I mean, like, we should have known better to do that after that's, you know, we should have learned that if we harm this dog and they're tied to the artifact, they won't be able to survive, and we just do that again to the dog, which seems really sad.
Yeah.
But hopefully we've learned from our lesson, and now Hati is our friend, and we've covered in the past that you can now mount Hati, and Hati is a toy, and Hati does all this cute stuff. And there's even a special tint that you get for Hati if you do the quest line, a special gray tint. So, yeah, not much to say there on it. Just
good news for
would
Hunters.
Yeah, a little smile on your face seeing Hati reunited. The whole head bump, as you've seen during the show, Brightpaw's really big on head bumps. So I thought, before the show, I was drinking water and he gave me a head bump and it knocked all the water onto my lap. So I thought that Hati was very realistic in that cutscene. So
the next topic
up
here,
which is basically our last news topic. So if you have any questions for us, you know, remember to get them in. Go ahead, Annie, with the last topic.
We have time walking going on right now in game. It is live currently. It's Burning Crusade, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep, Burning Crusade time walking involving Black Temple time walking as the raid.
Which, as a reminder, can help your demon hunters get the transmog for warglaives. And also, I want to remind you guys that time walking for WoD is coming up soon with 2 new mounts added to its vendor, meaning that you will need 5,000 badges times 2 in order to buy it. And this is a good time to start farming for it.
Yep. Also, demon hunters can get special warglaive transmog. So basically, you complete Black Temple, get the warglaives on any character, then you complete time walking version, and then your demon hunter can use warglaives as transmog, which is important because since they're legendaries, normally you can't use them for transmog, but lots of people, you know, they have a very special place, especially if you were playing back in the day and you really wanted the Warglades and you like always use them in your kill shots when you finally got them, but you couldn't transmog them. Now you can. So I'm one of those people that
Aww.
I always had one back in Burning Crusade, and I wanted both, and I kept farming them every week, and I finally got them in Ice Crown Citadel, and I always would then wear them in the kill shots, even though I couldn't transmog to them on my own. So, and that was exciting. Also, as a reminder, complete 5 dungeons, time walking dungeons for normal Dazar Allure gear. That is the cache, got updated from Uldir, so now we get Dazar Allure instead of Uldir loot. And I believe all the item levels for gear are bumped up to be appropriate for Dazar Allure. I think the Black Temple thing is like eye level 385, something like that. So that's
actually decent gear.
Yeah. But yeah, that's basically it with the show. We should do a final call on the giveaway. Moonkin Hatchling and Tettles, you say what the keyword is.
Hoot.
It's
H-O-O-T, hoot.
Yep, because Tettles is a balanced druid rider for Wowhead. And yeah, so before as we're wrapping this up, we just wanted to highlight some new guides and community stuff that's been going on Wowhead in the past week or so. The first thing is that we did a lore collaboration with Novel recently, our monthly collaboration. It's the story of Kultiras, which, as you now know after watching the show, is coming as an allied race in patch 815. And a lot of the lore in-game is kind of unclear because they've always been doing stuff in like the second and third war, but we don't really see it until, we get hints of it in BFA. So Novel walks you through what happened in BFA and then the zones leading up to it in case you're a Horde player and like you have no idea who the, Drew Star or why the Tide Sages are in Stormsong Valley. So he has a video, Novel does, and then I do like all the footnotes and linking to all the places you can actually experience the lore in game. So, it feels more immersive. Next thing we have to share is something Tettles and all of our class writers were working on. And we updated our season 2 guides, class guides, and we recently highlighted raid tips as well as mythic plus advice for all specs. We thought it was a good time to highlight with the raid being over because now maybe people are focusing on other things. Now that our writers have seen some mythic fights, they can offer advice. Now that, it's a few weeks in, maybe people are pushing higher keys, getting more comfortable with reaping. So yeah, I don't know if you have anything to say on that, Tettles. I know we were like deadlines, and you were really good. You got your deadlines done, even though you were, traveling all over the place in different continents.
Wow.
So,
I was actually
Gold
pretty
star.
good about having it done beforehand, especially like the raid
awesome.
and Mythic Plus. Like,
yeah,
doing raid and Mythic Plus at like a decent level, I actually had a pretty good understanding of what was going to be coming in the raid beforehand. I'm obviously going to be updating the raid guide all the way through Mythic Jaina at some point.
Yep.
I think I have like 5 or 6 bosses done, and I just need to be finishing up. I could probably do the rest through Jaina, but I need to just be setting some time aside to be able to do that. Overall, the guide is pretty good though. Making sure that you're able to do Mythic Plus stuff. Is the Balanced Druid specific Mythic Plus guide done yet, or?
I don't think we've highlighted that yet. That's a squishy thing. So, but yeah, we've also been highlighting advanced guides every few days. That's a project Squishy's been working on. So we just highlighted Elemental Shaman today, Arms Warrior yesterday. We've highlighted Blood DK, Beast Mastery Hunter. So we're trying to get, if you want to go beyond reaping and like take things to the next level, or you're thinking of maybe being more professional or competitive, we've been doing like a kind of second tier, advanced tier of guides for some interesting specs.
Yeah, those are really good if you need dungeon specific advice, like more in depth than what I'm able to give. Additionally to that, you can always hit me up on Discord or wherever else, and if you have like Moonkin specific questions, I'm normally more than happy.
That's very kind of you.
Tettles has a special guide writer role in Wowhead, so if you have a question for him or any of the other guide writers, you can just look for the people with purple text and message the appropriate one on Wowhead's Discord.
Oh, that's a great plug time for Wowhead's Discord.
Yeah.
There you go. Sass thought the same thing at the same time.
Yep.
Also, congratulations to Rafix, who won the Moonkin Hatchling. And it's extra special because I actually know Rafix, and he is a Boomy himself.
Let's go, dude. Yeah.
Mythic Raider Rafix Boomkin now has a little mini Boomkin to walk around with him. If he didn't have it already, I don't know. But yeah, that's really fitting. So congratulations. That's awesome.
Yay.
It was meant to be. It really was. Also, I wanted to mention...
You need to name it Tettles. Yeah.
Little Tettles.
Oh, yes.
Little
Yeah.
Tettles. Yeah.
Little Tettles. Have to name it that then. I wanted to mention one more thing. I just realized after we moved on from Time Walking that right now is also the Love is in the Air event. It's not over yet, and we mentioned it before. It is still going on. It's I think it lasts until next week Tuesday, and if you are like me trying to get the mount, it's good to remember that. And on EU, I'm not sure how the reset times are on NA, but on EU, on Tuesday morning, 8 a.m., there's reset time, and the event itself ends at 10 a.m. So my advice to you is to use those 2 hours to go for one extra run to hope to get it. I'm currently at 1,800 attempts and no mount.
Oh. Yeah, Annie is super into...
I try.
Like, how many alts do you have? You didn't max out your whole server. We have like 40 demon hunters or something that can do it. 45?
I needed 110. Like I needed 110 characters, like level 110.
Right.
So I managed to get 4,610 characters, and I think around 30 of them are demon hunters, 30 or 35. Since that's the easiest to level.
Many. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That is so many characters.
It's the only thing that I can level, so I was actually really upset because I did not know that you have to be 110. I assumed it would be the same as last year, so I was happily sitting on my level 102, level 103 demon hunters, thinking that's enough. And then 4 days before Love is in the Air event, I see a Wowhead post that tells me, oh, by the way, you have to be 110. So I had to go ahead and level everything. So but I did it with the help of invasions. We got there. Apparently it's 33 to be exact. Well, there you go. That's it. But yeah, I just wanted a quick reminder to people because next week it's over.
As the final article I wanted to highlight, it was a lot of the class writers did a huge effort to write this article called How the Meta Skews Spec Strength Perception. And we mentioned this a bit at the start of the show, but I think it's a really important read because it's just highlighting, people can get caught up in what's the flavor of the month class and think that every other class is horrible if they don't play the right thing, and then focus on not being that class instead of having fun with their spec. And we gave some examples of how people's perceptions have been clouded in the past, and you should really just play what's fun, focus on improving and being a good player instead of thinking that you have to be this class or else you're going to be, horrible at playing this and all other classes are trash. So I think it's a good read. I know we had a lot of people from different classes writing it. It wasn't just like one class that's not popular sitting up. It's like we had a lot of representation. People that were playing popular specs, people that weren't playing popular specs, chiming in to talk about it. So it was a really awesome article. We published it right around the time of the layoff, so it didn't get... I think that some of the attention was drowned out by all the sadness that was going around, but it's definitely worth a read. And we're working on, I believe, a part 2 examining how people have been, viewing the meta in Dazarlor as a follow-up. But it's definitely worth a read from our class writers. I'm really excited that we can, publish articles like these on Wowhead.
It's a very interesting topic because that kind of goes into, if you have a class that's been weak for a while, even if later it gets buffed and now it's equivalent to everything, people will still think it's bad, even though it's actually the same as everything else. So you find yourself as the class or the spec that's known as weak signing up for Mythic Plus, and you don't get invited because no one is up to date with the fact that your spec has actually been buffed, but they don't know that. So a lot of times what Blizzard has to do is actually overbuff things just for people to notice those specs that are underplayed because of how bad they were before.
And there's also things like sample sizes. So for example, if you're like, I see everyone playing the spec, it's like, well, maybe they can do 0.001 DPS, or they're trying to push with that spec, but it doesn't mean the other spec is horrible. It snowballs where the spec that's more popular gets way more parses as people try to compete with that.
Yeah.
And then other specs are neglected, or people don't think of how to improve or master the less popular specs because it's not as appealing for whatever reason, even though you can still do really well with it.
I mean, I think DPS Shaman is like historically been just the worst possible thing for that, because it's been so bad for so long that so many people just don't play it anymore. And right now, Elemental is very good right now. I mean, obviously, it's not better than a couple of the lock specs, Balanced Druid and Priest, but it is like top 80% of DPS.
Yeah. And this isn't to say that some specs don't have balance issues. It's just things can get exaggerated, or things that are viable can be suddenly seen as being not so great, just that they're not like the meta class.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a very interesting
just,
article.
Critically think, put some nuance into it, and we'll try to get some more articles out on that. We got a question for you, Tettles. We got one question. Who is your favorite boomy outside yourself?
Oh, I'm not at liberty to answer that. That's a bad answer. I can't answer that without offending many people.
That's okay. You like being toxic, right?
I don't know what to say. My favorite booby is my GM Valoris. Shout out to him.
Oh, there you go. We got an answer.
Yeah.
We got an answer. Yeah, you could have also cheated and said Rafix, since he was the one who won the giveaway.
I see Writer's Chat doesn't have any questions. Just they pinged me before asking who is Jaina, what is Jaina. So we asked that. We got an I don't know. We educated Tettles on Jaina, so I think we did a good deed for the day. But no questions from the Wowhead Writers Chat. I think we got them all answered.
Awesome. So. That's awesome. Do we have any general questions, or are we good?
No, it just was the Pixel. What was the guy's name again? So many things to scroll up. It just was the Pixelated. Yeah, Pixelated Ninja. He was the guy that was just asking who was. But yeah.
All right.
I think we got everyone else good and answered.
All right, that's awesome. Well, that leads us towards the end of the show. Tettles, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a blast. It's always great meeting people who know less about lore than I do. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, really, thank you so much for being here. And also all the people in the chat who have been commenting towards you have been very funny as well. So shout out to you guys in the chat as well.
Yeah.
Keep making fun of Tettles. I love it. I approve.
What? What is this? Hold on. Wait a second.
Writer's Chat represent.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, it's been really fun having you. So thank you for joining.
Thank you guys for having me so much. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Annie, when you have a sec, just check Kitsuki's ping in chat before we wrap it up. About the hosting.
Not my hair routine is roll out of bed, hit my hair with the hand comb, and then continue on.
Yeah.
Wait, where is the chat?
Oh, just Discord. Kitsuki
I can't because of cameras.
Oh, okay.
Wait. Okay. I'm gonna let you guys look at shrines for a second. Okay. These are the very beautiful shrines where you can change your racials.
Yep. Sorry about that.
It's okay. It's okay. Okay.
Technical issues. But yeah, we discussed Zanzalori shrines earlier in the show if you want to catch up on the VOD and learn more about them and if we think they're overpowered or not in the cooldown.
Let's go back to this. All right. Very beautiful shrines. Amazing.
Yeah.
Now we're going to go to the very beautiful faces of Perk and Tettles. All right. We're back. We are going to throw over our host to I don't want to say the name wrong.
You won't mind.
We are throwing the host over to Kibo straight after the show, who is apparently also a writer.
He's our Havoc writer. So.
Kib, yeah,
there you go. Oh, it's Kib? Okay, so it's not Kibbo, it's Kib.
Kibbo. I think it's like Kib Zero or Kibbo, whatever.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, we're going to throw over the host to him. So for those of you guys who want to follow us over onto his chat, feel free to click the host once we have sent it over. So yeah, we got that. Yep. We're going to take care of that. Going to send some love. But yeah, again,
Yep.
thank you so much, Tettles. And thank you everyone in the chat for hanging out, for asking questions, for being around, for being funny, for participating, for everything. All the support. I saw some subs and resubs as well. I do not have a list of the names here, but thank you. I noticed that there were some resubs in the chat, so thank you for that, for supporting Wowhead Weekly, and all of us.
Yep. So yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. I don't know when 815 is hitting, but I've really appreciated all the support to our allied race coverage. The guides we've been putting out, all the PTR updates. People have been really positive and enjoying things like the music and the dances and the cinematics. So thank you for all the support. Hopefully we'll have a patch update soon. But if we don't, we'll be updating our, usual guides, putting out our fun weekend features. I think we have Artist Corner this week, so yeah.
Look at Sass. Hang out with us on Discord. Yay, Discord link, which is fine. Send me money. Sass wants money at wowhead.com.
He's got a plug. Exactly. I like it. That's so good.
Oh, that's awesome. But yeah, before we go off, we have a tradition or a thing that we do at the end of the show, which is a high five. Can you join us for that, Tettles?
Is this the right hand? We have a guest
yes, you're using the right hand. So Tettles, I'm gonna need you to move a little bit to your left.
My left?
Yes, and then up your arm towards your right, and you're gonna hit the high five towards our cameras. You see it?
Yep.
Like hit my camera?
No, like
no,
like point it towards us.
Yeah.
Yes, like that.
So
no, other way. Yes, that way.
Okay. Yeah,
actually, you're gonna have to use two hands. One for me at the top and one for
I
Perk.
can't hold push to talk down, but okay, I'll figure this out.
Oh. Okay. All right. Perk, you do the countdown.
Okay. Wait, are you good, Tettles?
Yeah.
Okay.
He looks
so
good. Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna do the countdown. 1, 2, 3.
That was really good. Oh, multiple high fives. Okay.
Yay.
That was perfect. Thank you so much, Tettles.
Thank you.
We did
it's really
it.
fun to do that with this.
We
If
did
we ever
it.
have a dev on, we should make the can you make like Ian? It's like, hey, Ian, we do high five.
Thank you so yeah, high fives.
And then him and Laura starts doing it on the Q&As. But yeah, no, thank you so much, Tettles. Again, thank you, chat, for watching, and we will be back same time or an hour earlier, same time as usual, next week on Thursday. Until then, take care and bye-bye, everyone.
Later, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.